Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Tempe City Council work study session here at the at the Tempe History Museum. First item on our agenda is our call to the audience for the issue review session items. Audience members have up to 3 minutes to address the City Council. If you would like to speak on an item, please fill out a speaker's card, which can be found in the back of the council chambers, the temporary council chambers, and hand it to our clerk's office, and we will call you when it's your turn to speak. And when you do come forward, make sure you please provide your name and place of residence for the record. So is there anyone, I do not have any cards. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us? Could you please get my attention? Miriam? Come on down, Miriam. Right there.
I didn't sign a card. I know you're looking
You're gonna have to either sit down or hold the microphone up to you.
So comfortable. All right. Is this good? I know that you're considering this north-south spur multi-use path. And I understand there are 3 options of what's going to happen. We really want to know about that because depending on your suggestion, some may be better than others. We're worried about the traffic. We're worried about a traffic light or a baseline at Kyrene where there are multiple accidents, and we did have a study done, and that was not as conclusive for needing it, but I understand there's a railroad problem with that. We need more information on what you're going to do so that we can put our ideas out there for doing this. It's not that it's a bad idea, but how you do it is going to impact our neighborhood seriously, and we want to know what that's going to be like. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address us on any of the items listed on the consent agenda or on the issue review session? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, to close that portion. Next, I'd like to call Marge, Mr. Steve Palmer, up to go over our federal principles, and welcome.
Thanks, Mayor, council members. I'm Marge Zilla, Government Relations Officer for the city, and I'll have Steve Palmer introduce himself.
Thank you. I'm Steve Palmer, Vice President at Advanced Coik Associates. Work with the city on your federal agenda.
In item 2A, you'll find for your review Tempe's federal legislative principles for the remainder of this year and going into 2020. And before we begin discussion on that component, I'd like to turn it over to Steve to provide an update from DC.
Thank you, Marge. Mayor and members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. What I'd like to do is very briefly give you a snapshot of kind of what's going on in Washington right now to the degree you can in a brief period of time, and then highlight a couple issues, notably transportation and housing, and I'll certainly be happy to answer any questions about those or any other issues you may have. So if you look over the year, the big accomplishment in Congress and with the White House was the 2-year budget deal. Earlier this reached agreement on a bill that essentially does 3 things that are probably good for the short term and maybe next year as well. And that is they eliminated budget sequestration, so that's no longer an issue. That's now gone. They raised the federal debt limit until July of 2021. And they agreed to spending caps, top line spending caps for the defense and non-defense programs in the federal budget for fiscal 20 and fiscal 21. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is that the money is not allocated to programs or any, that still has to be done through the regular appropriations process. And when I say it's bad news, it's because it's September 19th and the fiscal year starts on October 1st. And none of the 12 appropriations bills have been signed into law. None of them have even passed the House and Senate. So Congress is right now in the midst of trying to finalize both the appropriations bills, those 12 different bills, within those agreed to spending caps. And then knowing that they're not going to be able to get complete action on all 12, they're also trying to pass a continuing resolution that will fund the government until November 21st. I'd like to tell you that because they're doing, and the House passed that bill earlier today by 302 to 120, I think, something like that. So it was bipartisan support. But I'd like to tell you that that means there's not going to be a government shutdown. And I don't think anybody in Washington knows that yet. because the fight over the southern border wall and how much money, if any, is going to be diverted to that and spent on that continues to be an issue where there's significant disagreement both in the House, but also among Senate Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. We don't know, no one knows, of course, how far the president will fight, whether he'll force a government shutdown like he did last year or partial government shutdown or not. So the appropriations process will continue to play out through until Thanksgiving. Hopefully there'll be some resolution at that point in time, and then they can spend whatever other time they're working on other legislation. So I mentioned I was going to talk about transportation and housing. First on transportation, congratulations to the city, congratulations to Valley Metro. You're within days of having formal execution of a $75 million grant for the streetcar. It's not final. Congress is in the midst of its 10-day review period that is required by statute. But I can assure you that the way the process works, these congressional committees that are looking at this grant agreement have been notified every month along the way, and they're well aware of what the agreement is. So no one anticipates any problems at all, and hopefully then by the middle of next week, that grant will be ready for execution. So again, job well done by all of you. With respect to transportation in a bigger picture, in a legislative sense, I mentioned probably the biggest accomplishment, the biggest disappointment of the year was the lack of an infrastructure bill. Everyone talked about $1 trillion, $2 trillion, whatever the number is, but no one could come up with, everyone figured out how to spend it, but no one could come up with a way to pay for it. Revenue remains incredibly elusive. So the infrastructure bill never formally died, but it was kind of agreed to informally to be pushed aside. Part of the reason they did that is that the current surface transportation authorization bill, which is a 5-year bill, expires about a year from now, September 30th, 2020. And that 5-year bill funds highways, roads, bridges, transit, passenger rail, auto safety. So when they say surface transportation, it really is everything. That bill is going to be a vehicle. It's for a lot of different things, in addition to funding those areas. And let me just say briefly, the Senate has started the process already, trying to anticipate next year being an election year. The Senate committee that handles highway and bridges issues has approved unanimously, bipartisan bill, $287 billion over 5 years for highways and bridges. The number doesn't mean much right now because there's not enough money in the Highway Trust Fund to pay for any of it. So again, raising the gas tax, dealing with vehicle miles traveled, it's not clear how they're going to pay for it, but this bill has to be done, or highway construction really grinds to a halt next year at September of next year, and public transit funding will certainly be cut off, and not just grants, but formula money that people expect. So Arizona DOT, Valley Metro, and all of those organizations that live off the Highway Trust Fund funding are in dire need of having that gas tax increased or another alternative source of funding put in place. That bill is also, I mentioned, going to be a vehicle for other things. The Senate bill doesn't include a lot of money, but it includes $6 billion for climate change, essentially climate change issues, for carbon emission reduction programs. So that is money that for the first time ever, they've set aside for trying to address climate change, realization that climate change is there. They don't call it climate change, they'll call it resiliency, but it is the first step. And I think the House bill, when they start their process after January 1st, Peter DeFazio from Oregon is very committed to trying to address carbon emissions. The mayor's nodding his head, he's aware of that. Carbon emissions, and trying to make sure that the transportation bill is not just about building highways, but it's also about realizing that you've got to do more for the environment. On housing, if I can shift to that, and again, I'm happy to answer any questions at your convenience. There is a great deal of interest in certain parts of the country, including Tempe and the Phoenix area, about affordable housing and trying to do more on public housing and affordable housing, low-income housing. Unfortunately, it's not a realization that's shared across the country. On tax issues, for example, the chair of if you talk about a low-income housing tax credit, the chair of the Finance Committee comes from Iowa, in the Senate, not exactly a concern of theirs as much as many other issues. So while it's a regional issue, it's huge in California, it's big in Arizona, it's big in other parts of the country. It's not yet a universal issue across the country. And I know many of you are in leadership positions on the national organizations and know a whole lot more about this than I do. So I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm just trying to give you the snapshot that I perceive where things are. There are a significant number of bills that have been introduced, particularly in the House. There are bills that are also in the Senate on trying to address housing issues. I can run through a number of those if you'd like. I see at least one nod. So the one that has gotten the furthest, well, and I'm also going to say too, let's start at the top. The presidential campaigns on the Democratic side are all about doing something with housing right now. If you saw Senator Bernie Sanders propose a $2.5 trillion package of housing and homelessness issues over the weekend, to be determined exactly how that would happen if it were to happen. Senator Harris Kamala Harris has introduced legislation that would allow a refundable tax credit for people who rent a principal residence that exceeds 30% of their gross income. So there are other and I should say Elizabeth Warren too has also talked about putting almost $500 billion rather into the housing trust fund. So this has gotten the attention of the presidential candidates. Unfortunately, how you pay for these is yet to be determined. I will say some of the candidates have proposed how to pay for it. One bill that has at least been approved by the committee has been a bill introduced by Maxine Waters of California. This was approved by the Financial Services Committee earlier this year, would provide $13 billion for homelessness and housing shortages. Money would go to McKinney-Vento homeless assistance grants and Section 8 housing choice vouchers and the National Highway Trust Fund, so housing trust fund. So there are proposals out there. I will say they haven't gotten bicameral support. While they've gotten some support in the House, the Senate is still bills are being introduced and not necessarily under consideration at this point. So again, I'm happy to kind of go into other issues, but with that, I'd like to turn it over to you and let you answer any questions.
Great. Any questions from the council? First, before we go in there, Steve, I want to thank you and Marge for all the work that you do at the federal level. And believe it or not, it's very important that we communicate our municipal needs and the policy issues that are meaningful to us. And I just want to thank you for your help, especially like with the streetcar. About a year ago this time, I, along with some members from Valley Metro and some members from the Tempe Chamber, we went back to talk to you about the importance of the streetcar funding and how it's a true public-private partnership. And that trip actually produced great results. Not soon after that, we had a very favorable letter from the acting FTA administrator, Ms. Jane Williams. So that's exciting for us, and I know that we should be getting some information. I mean, we've been approved, but we have to wait for the process to play out. But so thank you for that. And I know we're also continuing to advocate with your help to help understand some of the programs that accelerate some of our strategic priorities. For instance, public safety, human services, as you mentioned. It may not get some of the attention in other parts of the country, especially with the leadership, but it's important that we continue to advocate on our behalf in our community from the home funds, this community development block grants that are always on the chopping block, it seems to, lately. The housing choice vouchers, veteran homeless programs, obviously senior citizens reauthorization of increased funding for programs, and obviously home-based services for the elderly, because in Tempe, we are a caring, compassionate community that really looks for those human services. We do everything from kids from early pre-K all the way to aging in place. And I think that's something that's part of our strategic priorities. And I want to thank you for your help with that and continue to advocate for us. So I really do appreciate that. And the council, on behalf of the city, we appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mayor. When I kind of jumped over into the legislation, I failed to mention that while Congress is not necessarily advancing new legislation for new housing programs, they are fully funding and even adding more money to the programs you mentioned: Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Partnership Program, the Section 8 voucher program. All have gotten increases, even from the Republican Senate. So there's a recognition of need, but there's just unfortunately not as many resources yet as we'd like.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
So is there any talk on the Hill about, well, Trump has been mouthing off about homelessness lately and wanting to EPA cite San Francisco for creating pollution from its homeless population? And so is there, all this bluster, is there anything that's being directed towards the budget to address homelessness as he says he wants to solve it?
Short of the programs I mentioned, no. I think in the appropriations process, they're fully funding the ones that are in place right now. I won't comment about what the president is proposing for California, but it's novel and but it isn't something that I think many people will really take effect. And ultimately, I think the programs are growing, but not at the pace that necessarily addresses the overall problem.
Thank you.
Robin?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. I'm sorry I missed you. I just got back from DC last night and had a really, really good opportunity to talk with several Congress people and senators. And And some of the things that we really heard, well, of course, we were there to talk a lot about workforce and infrastructure and how important that is. I think across the country, there's so many different cities that, have some crumbling infrastructure and really want to make sure that that's up to speed. But I think one of the things that seemed to, and I guess I really wasn't expecting it, that rose to the surface and on a lot of conversations were this discussion about broadband. That was something that continually came up, and especially not necessarily, it was urban broadband. So it wasn't necessarily just in rural areas, but in a lot of different places where you've got carriers that only want to go to select areas within the urban center and not service all the areas. So, I mean, if there is something that we can do in regards to that, I know that's conversations that we've had as a council. It'd be really great to follow that. And I know bringing back the housing tax credit, it was great to be able to talk about Valor on 8 in regards to how we were able to utilize the housing tax credit. And I think how important that is, for other different communities. But I would say homelessness seemed to be the key wherever we went, and that really wasn't even why we were there. It seemed that the direction of the conversation would always revert back to homelessness, and I think that the individuals that we spoke with really understand that it is a crisis across the country, and hopefully they're actually going to put the pen to paper and come up with something really good. And the other one piece and I know I'm going to get this, I want to say it is the Peterson Act that really gives the funding for CTE programs, was a really big concern. And I think that's something that we need to make sure it gets reauthorized. It's coming up. As you know, the CTE program is really important. That is something that we partner with our Career Ready Tempe, and we talk about a skilled workforce, making sure that we have the human capital for all of the different jobs that we are creating. We want them to come from the city of Tempe. So those were just kind of some of the things that I noticed that weren't necessarily on the list of things that you have here as priorities. So if there's some way we can kind of talk about those, and maybe the expansion when it comes to transportation. And then other thing that came up in regards to transportation was first mile, last mile, how we can incorporate that outside of just infrastructure. And then of course, like paratransit, that was another thing that was discussed several times in regards to making sure everybody has accessibility, because a lot of it has to be subsidized. So that was another thing that was pretty prevalent in a lot of conversations that we had. Oh, and I just want to say to Randy, while I have the opportunity, I had an opportunity to meet with Senator Feinstein, and she asked about, well, isn't there any city that has a homeless program that people could actually work in the city and get a job? And so I was able to share our program of Tempe Works with Senator Feinstein, and she was really, really excited to hear about it and thought that's exactly what we need across the country is, people really willing to put in the work and create job opportunities with a comprehensive approach. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
No, I'll just say thank you. I appreciate your naming off some of those programs. I think they're all important, and they are programs we work on generally, but it's always helpful to hear you mention them.
Well, and the last thing, sorry, because I know Joel's going to bring this up, that we talked a lot about is not only the dollars that is going to the states for the opioids, but about changing the language of that bill so the money comes directly to the city. So that's something that we really were pushing, and really hopefully, and I think we need to think about it in a broader perspective too. I mean, when things are reauthorized, and it's always really great to try to make it better than what it was. Thank you. Sorry, Joel.
She got me on that. No, she took care of everything I needed to say.
All right, see?
And on that, if I may, council member, both of you, all of you, is that there's a recognition, I think, nationally that was, the program was set up, it was aimed at the states initially, and I think thanks to your advocacy, and we're trying to add to that so that there is a lot of attention focused on trying to move some of that money to the localities.
Well, it's just the fact, and it's obviously, we firsthand, we see the effects. We see through our public safety and all that we have within the city of what we can and can't do. We're doing a great job research, data collection here within the city of Tempe, and trying to mitigate it, and also trying to provide programs to help get people within the area help, specific help and logical help. And it comes down to also when we talk about the opioid funding, but it also comes down to being able to work with Medicare and Medicaid and on billing and billing process, because that's the biggest hang up, is the fact that they can't bill for certain services. And that's probably the number one thing that when we talk about mental health, when we talk about drug addiction, we're talking about things that are not going to be covered. Transportation for those things are not covered, which is probably the number one thing to get them to the right place and the right location at the right time. So those are really solid things that we see here locally that really have a big benefit. And just one more thing is, and it was briefly touched, the small cells, 5G, and, local control on that and having some ability with that. And we need also to be able to provide our residents with education of those small cells too, both good and bad and whatever is out there. But I think logically, what is where it's put up, it just affects us potentially. I think you know that. So thank you.
If I may, council member, one of the things we have been trying to work on and get a better understanding of is why the Federal Communications Commission hasn't updated their radio frequency standards. Essentially, they're relying on standards that were created in the 1970s. And Chairman Pai of the FCC seems very comfortable with that. And we're trying to put some pressure through Congress on the FCC to try to at least update those.
And that's going to be huge. And I am going, not, there are some issues that are coming up with the city, even I work with, on cell sites as it comes up. And as 5G comes up and concerns of what that effect has on health concerns, these are things that we need, logically we need to, as to your point, update on what that technology does, how it affects, and where it should be placed. So just some great education on that.
Vice Mayor Kuby.
So the EPA has a lot of rules that help protect the environment. And I know under the Trump administration, there's been 53 rollbacks completed. There's 32 in process and a number under court challenge, of course. And that's how we can push back. But I'm wondering, and these relate to air pollution and emissions, drilling and extraction, infrastructure and planning, animals, toxic substances and safety, and water pollution. We mentioned water in our list of priorities. Could we add another statement about oppose any rollbacks of environmental regulations? Can we add that to our list of priorities?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, we could dive into this and maybe broaden it. There are certain regulations that we've seen in the past that are maybe modeled after places on the East Coast that wouldn't be as applicable to Arizona. And so in the past, we have gone to the EPA and said, perhaps these rules would not apply to Arizona. And so we would like you to reflect our geography more accurately. So in the instance that comes up, maybe we'll find something if it's the pleasure of council to address that without limiting our ability to respond to some of those rules that might not be applicable to Arizona.
Okay. Good.
People agree?
Yeah. Thanks, Marge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
All right, next item. Update on the downtown Tempe programs. Miss Kate Borders, welcome.
Do I really need to hold this, or can you hear if it's sitting there? Do you want me to? I have to hold
We can
it.
hear you, but I don't know if the recording can or the people in the audience.
Got it. That's lovely. How's that? Okay. Mayor and Council, thank you for having me this afternoon for a downtown update. It's interesting listening to the federal report and how there are items that trickle down to the local level that are even in this report today. So we know that happens, but it's great to see it, happening right now. So first of all, I wanted to let you know about a new grant program that we have. Okay, I have the clicker. Where we are now offering grants to teachers in Tempe to buy school supplies, particularly art teachers. And the way this started is last year, as you all know, 2018 was the 50th anniversary of the Tempe Festival of the Arts. Well, in preparing for that, we wanted to do something that would connect us more to the community and also have the festival give back to the community. So first, we launched a program that has now been at the last two festivals, so fall of 18 and spring of 19, called Young Collectors. So artists that are participating in the festival donate a work of art, and then kids 12 and under can go buy a piece of artwork for $5. Well, that $5 fund then is creating sort of a pool of money that we're then giving back to school teachers. So the grant just launched about a month and a half ago, and it is up live on our website. So if you know art teachers in Tempe schools, tell them that this is a great way for them to get some extra funding for art supplies.
Right.
And it also kicked off in the beginning with a $5,000 grant from Opus to get it going. So we appreciate that. Right now, we only have 3 applications.
I heard from some art teachers in Tempe that, and this isn't on you, but that in the districts, it can be a long lag in getting the grant. There's some mechanism that can take 3 to 5 months to actually get the funds.
Well, what we plan to do is when we give these dollars out, we're going to give them directly to the school. We're not going to the district.
Oh,
So we're going directly to the school. So the only, and it's a very simple process because we're only doing grants for up to $500. It's just supposed to supplement, supply costs. So we don't have a rigorous application process. We just really want to help the teachers on the ground.
Cool.
Teachers also, it might be good to talk to teachers about the reporting dates, because someone mentioned that they may be unrealistic. And
Yes, we did
teachers
hear that
schedule.
from one teacher and we pushed it back a month.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because we want to make sure that it's easy for everyone to meet the requirements. So the first deadline is November 1st, if you hear anyone who's interested. Okay. Next, the Tempe Mission campaign was launched at the end of 2016, and the goal was to raise $100,000 to give to local agencies that are in the social service field. Downtown Tempe Authority is not a social service agency, but we found that need, obviously, in the streets of downtown, and we wanted to do something to assist with that. And again, back to this conversation that we were just having from the federal level about homelessness, we do see these issues obviously locally, and so it's impacting everyone. To date, we've raised $95,000. $60,000 of that is cash and $35,000 is in kind. And when I reference in kind donations, they're things like actual food donations. So for example, Encounter, before the name change, donated meals to iHelp for a year, once a month. So those types of donations that were direct needs of the agencies would then fall into our in-kind category. So at this point, we've got $95,000 raised, and we will complete the campaign this year and raise the rest of the money and distribute all of the cash on hand.
Okay.
Next, I wanted to give you an update on the digital kiosks that we are trying to implement in downtown in first quarter 2020. So we currently have existing wayfinding throughout the district. There are, I believe right now, exactly 14 wayfinding static signs that have a map on them. There were 15 and one was removed at some point. And essentially these kiosks that we would like to install will replace those, but they'll be a modern day version of getting information to people on the streets. There'll be touch screens, as you see here. It looks very user friendly, and it's sort of uses applications that are similar to mobile devices. People can walk up and touch what looks like an app and get information. So the things that will be available on these devices would be, of course, a business listing, which would be specific to downtown. So if you were to pull up your own mobile device and search for, hypothetically, a pizza restaurant, you might get something, you might be directed to Phoenix or Chandler, but this device will only have our downtown businesses listed on the device. Then you can immediately take that information and send it to your mobile device to get directions to the restaurant or the business that you want to go to. They are ADA compliant, so there's a button on them that shifts the entire screen down if that is a need, and they have multiple languages available. So hopefully anyone that has a different language than English as their main language can come up and get their language on the device as well. From a light perspective, the light pollution in the evenings will not be a concern because they go into a light reduction mode automatically as soon as evening hours kick in, and that's programmed, before we even receive them. As far as the other sort of apps that will be on there, there will be connections to social service agencies. There will be connections to a job board that, again, is only Tempe specific. There will be connections to fun things like social apps where you could actually take a photo and send it out and report that you're on Mill Avenue or wherever you are. We could even do fun quizzes and questions or gather data if we would like to. There will also be an emergency call button. So if anyone is actually experiencing something right there on site, they can push a button and be directed immediately to PD. And they'll be able to send out other emergency alerts as well. Not to mention real-time transit, so streetcar and those things as well. Questions?
ViceMayor Cubey.
So, I'm sorry.
No, after you.
Related to questions about human services, if someone's in need of services to the point that we want the HOPE team to come out and immediately come out, is that a possibility to make an immediate connection there? I don't know if it's through emergency system or through.
I would assume that if it was an emergent need, that they would just use the call button. And hopefully, if they're on our streets in downtown, our safety patrol will have already seen them from that perspective as well, because we call HOPE on a daily basis for people that are on the streets.
So they'd be able to call HOPE as well, or
Yes.
just a phone number for HOPE.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Adams.
Yes, I saw the kiosks in San Antonio, and they are fantastic, and they can do so many things, and I think they'll be really helpful for both our residents and our tourists. And we want to continue to increase our tourism business. So I'm very excited that we're making this happen, and good job to you on this
Oh, thank you.
effort.
And I'm glad you're thinking of tourism as board member on the tourism board as well. The other thing that I think is really important is that they are tracking air quality and pedestrian counts. So we'll have pedestrian data that we've never had. And Lauren, I did get a little bit of information about what they're tracking from an air quality perspective, but these are things that I don't know what they are, but if you'd like, I can tell you.
Sure.
Okay, so overall air quality, which I do understand that, PM 2.5, PM 10, CO, NO2, and SO2. And we will get monthly reports on all of those things. So apologies for not knowing exactly what all that is.
And we've spoken, and you know how thrilled I am about the Ike system.
Yes.
I've seen him in LA a couple of years ago, and I'm excited about the potential for ASU scientists to be able to connect with that data, use that data, and maybe do some tracking and studying
Absolutely.
air quality.
And the data will be specific to each location, so there might be variances depending on traffic as well. Mhm.
Real quick on the Ike, I think it's an innovative and creative way, and I think it's really looking forward to get the feedback from the data that you mentioned that we could be receiving, that we will receive. Do you have a timeline or how you're going to measure whether or not it's been successful? So like we have a time period, like if it's not successful, then what's the plan?
Well,
So like in other words, we had another vendors in the past where we did something out, and I know this is part of the master agreement that we're going to have with you, that they're responsible for removing if something goes awry, and that I know that's going to be taken care of. But how are you going to measure whether or not these are successful? What does that look like?
I would assume that it's based on tracking. I mean, as you know, these are paid for by ads, which you can see on that example right there. The ad kind of flips up to the top when it's in use, and if they will not be able to continue to fund these if the ads aren't being seen. So it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy that also includes they're tracking the usage of them, how many times people, every single thing that is going to happen through those devices will be tracked. So every time somebody downloads data to their phones, all of that type of stuff. So I think we can review that and we could modify and move them to different locations. The other thing about the system is that it will update from a software perspective on a daily basis. Little tweaks will be fixed, little bugs will be fixed, and then major software upgrades will be happening almost every few weeks. So they're constantly improving the product itself. And they are currently only in Denver, San Antonio, Baltimore, Columbus, Cleveland, and Coral Gables. And they are very successful in all of those locations. Denver, I believe, has had them for 3 years now, and they only continue to get more usage.
Would it be good to have a year check-in on something like this, just to see if this is worth the investment for both parties?
Or not investing.
I mean,
Yes.
correct, but I mean, otherwise, if it's,
Emotional investment.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think it'd be good to always have at least a year check-in, and I would like to see, before part of the metric, like what a successful Ike program would look like.
Absolutely.
So if you could figure out what the other cities make them successful, and it'd be kind of good for us to know what to gauge and what to look for. And then we may get a different idea of what those other cities, what they view as successful versus what we may, us may be, the human service aspect. It may be the data, the information that we receive, or the research that could be compiled from the data. So that's why I think it'd be important to have some type of measure, if that's possible.
I definitely think we can, yeah.
We noticed that the locations that were chosen, there weren't any near the TCA, and that seemed like a logical place to have an Ike. Is there a reason, are you considering that, or is there a reason why it's not chosen?
We definitely are considering that. The final 15 locations aren't 100% nailed down yet. We'll provide those as we do the engineering work at the locations. I think the initial idea was that they wanted 15 locations that have the highest traffic so they can justify it to their advertisers, and then expand the program after those 15, they can justify it financially. But yeah, the TCA would be within that first kind of expansion.
Councilmember Adams?
Yes, can you just give us a little idea about where they're going to be located? I don't expect you to give all 14 or 15 locations, but just an overview.
Basically, every major intersection of Mill, a few intersections on Ash, and a few intersections on College. So the downtown district itself, we wanted them all to be within our boundaries for this first launch because that's the area that we have purview over. And that area is from the lake to University and from Farmer to College. So they're all within that area at this time.
Yeah.
Possibly 2 at Rio and Mill because there's so much traffic at that intersection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Kate. Thank you for your work on this. I think these will be a great asset for the area. I have a question. You had at one point talked to us about the advertisements and how there would be some control, may not be the right word, but some vetting process for those advertisements. Were there additional, can you update me on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an agreement with Ike that is, it specifies ads that we do not want within these units. And it's specific to things that would be competitive in nature to our businesses within downtown. So for example, if one was right in front of a pizza restaurant, we wouldn't want a pizza advertisement of another restaurant in another location on that screen. But those aren't really our main concern. We didn't want things that were political in nature, things that were that families might find offensive, things of that nature. We didn't want another downtown, hypothetically downtown Scottsdale says they want to advertise on our Ikes to go to downtown Scottsdale. We didn't want that. And then we even had a conversation at our last meeting about a major university coming in that isn't our major university and that we wouldn't want that to take place. So we have put all those parameters into our agreement at this point in time.
Thank you.
And also a point on the advertising, there is revenue that is generated, a revenue share that comes back to the host. And that money, whatever money comes to us, we would report to the city on a regular basis. We would keep it separate. And then we would use that for downtown infrastructure, planters. If there were anything that we decided together collectively to do in downtown, that money would then sort of be available for that. Any other questions on Ike?
Good job.
Well, it's important to note that the energy use of Ike's will be carried by Ike. We won't,
Correct.
the city and
Correct.
the downtown authority won't be paying for that. So that's great.
Yes, there are no costs incurred by the city. So not for installation, not at any point. Next, again, back to a conversation that we've already spoken about tonight. We have recently, within the last year, seen a need for our program, our safety patrol program, to change. And the program, which started in 2011, had historically been basically a safety and ambassadorial type role. And business improvement districts, which is sort of the general term for our type of industry around the country, have started shifting a little bit more into an outreach capacity. And so a year ago, we made that shift ourselves just because the need was there. So we have a shift every day, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 7 days a week, that is focused solely on outreach. That person goes around to individuals who seem as if they are in need within the downtown, and they approach them. They start with any sort of medical needs that are taking place, any sort of check-in on where they are, and if they need an ID, where are they in that process, things of that nature. If there's anything else happening that they feel that this individual needs to be made aware of from an education perspective, they also do that as well. And on an average day, that shift will interact with approximately 20 people. And it is safe to say that anyone in our downtown, unless they arrived today from another location and are struggling in our downtown, that these individuals on our team know them, they know their situations, they're helping them to try to find a better circumstance. And biweekly, they sit down with the HOPE team and discuss with the HOPE team the individuals that they're both experiencing, have this relationship with. So together, the two teams are trying to find solutions for individuals that are on our streets. Next, I wanted to give you a little update on how we're using that grant money that you just heard that we're getting, streetcar. This summer, obviously, was the beginning of the construction process, the heavy construction in downtown. Our street was closed, Mill Avenue, for a 2-month period, only in the northbound side. So to back up a little bit, when we first learned about streetcar, we started educating our merchants at that time. We even did a tour of Tucson in 2015, and we started doing regular workshops on marketing and how to get your business ready. We reached out to dozens of different downtowns who had already had sort of a process similar, either streetcar or something else that would be a similar construction process, and asked them how they kind of readied their merchants, and did a variety of workshops over the last few years. Then when the project was actually underway and the construction was taking place, we did a very fun signage campaign. I don't know if everyone saw it, but I think we had liberties that maybe the city wouldn't have had, so we had a little bit more fun. with signage, and then we did regular events at different merchant places of business and added a lot of programming during that construction time to try to keep people coming downtown. And we also have been consistently for years now tracking merchant sales. It's voluntary, but if they give us their information, and it's usually on a percentage increase and decrease, they don't give us dollars. But so we track their sales, and I did give you a little report for those 2 months, so you have it there, that demonstrates sort of what I know some of it's tiny, but essentially a third of the businesses reported that they actually saw a 15% increase from last year to this year, and about 2/3 of the merchants reported that they had about an average of a 24% decrease. So yes, there are more who experienced decrease in sales, but what we found when we did all of our research nationwide was that most construction projects actually resulted in an average of a 30% decrease across the board. So we fared a little better than national averages for these types of construction projects. And we continue to track the merchants on a regular basis and try to make sure that they are doing the best that they can.
Councilmember Adams?
I have a question about that as far as the businesses. Are we doing anything to try to help them gain what they lost quicker or anything like that to just help them recover faster from their losses?
Well, I think, yes. What we're doing now at this point in time is kind of a quick recovery from a social perspective, from a marketing perspective. We have executed a lot of different campaigns that are like, come to downtown, the streets are open, construction is over, those types of things.
Okay.
So, and we're working with them on things that they should be doing of the same nature to get them to kind of be speaking to their constituents about coming back downtown. Yeah. Any other questions? And my last update is not necessarily an update, but more just a little bit of gratitude. We are very much looking forward to moving into the Hayden house next year. And as you know, I think most of you have done tours of the space. The Adobe restoration is going really well. It's going to be a beautiful building, and we're looking forward to being a partner of the city's once we relocate into that space. We plan to offer regular tours, work with the History Museum and others to have appropriate art and things of that nature that kind of speak to that history within the building. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity for, even if there are events that we can't find other places to have events, we could have them in that courtyard, things that benefit the community. Also, is not right now a place that you could go to get a City of Tempe t-shirt or a downtown t-shirt or a Mill Avenue thing of that nature. So we could do some sort of retail co-op in the space. And of course, if any merchant came on board that wanted to take that over in the future, we would never want to compete with merchants. So it would only be if we were adding to what's available in downtown, but not taking away. So we're very much looking forward to it. And then I gave you 2 other handouts just for your records. One is stats. So these are from our last fiscal year, so you can kind of see generally how we are tracking the things and the programs that we do. And then I also gave you a list of upcoming events. So from a fun perspective, mark your calendars for the 2 parades. I think most of you typically have been in the street parade, and we would welcome that again. So the date is November 29th, the day after Thanksgiving. And then if you, of course, would like to come to the boat parade or even be a judge yet again, Robin, we would welcome that as well. So just some heads up there. Any questions?
I have a question.
Councilmember Keating?
Thank you, Mayor. I saw that you mentioned in a way that the Tempe mission has reached its goal. Now that it's reached its goal, what happens moving forward? Is it going to continue to collect money, or you guys, what's going to happen with that?
Yes, we don't plan on ceasing operations. We still, even before the campaign, we did annual food drives, we did annual toiletry drives, things of that nature. We'll continue to work with the agencies as we always have. None of that's actually going to discontinue, and we'll keep tracking it and give you a report in a year as to where we are in a year.
Great.
I think when it first ramped up, we had approximately 30 different businesses that got involved and did their own signature events and gave to the campaign. And so it was sort of that initial drive that drew a lot of money, but the mission meters that are on the kiosks still continue to generate money. We also have a mobile meter that we've sent to different corporations on a regular basis, and that continues to generate money, and we'll continue with all of that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to really commend you on everything you've done with all the programming and with your update. So you and your staff we look to you as a really true value partner, especially when it comes to the safety patrol. Obviously, the mission campaign is successful. I don't know too many other DTAs around the country that do this kind of work. But you took it upon yourself, and I want to give really kudos to you and your team and your staff. And especially with, it's good to hear some of the impact that the streetcar construction did and didn't have on the merchants. I think compared to the national average, we fared better, but we do know that in the long run, it's really going to be beneficial to those businesses and your members for the downtown area. And I look forward to continuing to work with you, obviously, and the DTA in the years to come, because we have a phenomenal downtown that you're helping create where people want to be. And you're seeing that with the investment that we're looking at. And then also the innovative solutions like the Ike, I think is really a testament to what you do. And then not only that, I mean, we're big on education here, and it's very fitting to have an arts grant program tied to the Tempe Arts Festival. It's just so fitting. So thank you for doing that as well. Councilmember Ardona Savage.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just a couple things. I don't, Kate, I just want to thank you for your leadership. I mean, I think since you've been here, we've really built our partnership even stronger than it's been in the past. And I think you've been really innovative, like the mayor said, and doing what you can to really beautify and enhance downtown. And I know the merchants are very, very happy about that too. So I know people really appreciate you. So I just want to say thank you for that. And all your work really to get through streetcar construction. I mean, you really went above and beyond, I think, to include the merchants. And I would say that's one thing that I've continued to hear is they feel like they're updated and they know what's going on. And I think they really do appreciate that communication. And all the people I talk to that are actually out there building the streetcar have really appreciated the relationship with DTA. And that starts with you and your team. So thank you so much for what you do. The one question I just wanted to ask, and I know we've had this conversation before, is about activation of different areas of the downtown. And I don't know if that's something that we can focus on in the near future, because I think there are probably some hot spots that would probably benefit from having some more activation, whatever it may be. I know you mentioned putting planters or something like that there. Have we thought any more about that, or what can we do to help you support that in your efforts?
Absolutely. If I had an unlimited source of funding, there are so many things.
For you right there.
Yeah, there are so many things that we would be ready to do immediately. Definitely, I think more plants, more planters. We're looking at, right now, we're actually putting back in the hanging baskets because those go away for the summer months. So those are coming back this month. And then we replant all of the planters in downtown. But I would love to have triple the number of planters that we have and pots. I think that would be awesome. And then from an activation perspective, we do a lot of things at Centerpoint. It's a natural space. And so we do, a Friday weekly activation there. And we do a lot of things at 6th Street Market or at 6th Street Park, such as the 6th Street Market. But I think that other areas are ripe for activation as well. And it's always just comes to resources. So we keep, as we get more as assessments grow for us, we put more money into placemaking, which is where that kind of ends up being. And we plan to keep doing that.
Well, I mean, I love that idea, and I'm certainly open to thinking what those resources might look like and how we can kind of help and work on that together. So I think that's, been one of the successes of downtown, and you've already done that. To the extent that you were able to with the resources that you had. But like you said, we can't go for unlimited resources, but I do think we can find a happy medium. And so yeah, I'd really like to work with you on that maybe this next year and see what we can do to increase that. And also, I just want to say I love judging the boat parade. It's a lot of fun. I look forward to it, and I am so sorry. And it was very nice of you not to mention the fact that the DTA team beat the City of Tempe team in kickball the other night, even though we weren't there. Right, so that could have been part of the reason. But
yeah.
Again, Kate, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Quick thing. Just to that point, you failed to mention one statistic: the injury rate of our team compared to other teams.
Yes, bigger or older.
Those are your stats.
Councilman Navarro.
No, and I was just going to parlay off of Councilmember Ardona Savage's comments with the partnerships that we can do with the city and making sure that there are great advantages that you guys do, but you need resources and help. And I think that's one of the things that I'm glad it was mentioned that I think we need to step up and start doing a little bit more, because the benefit of what you guys do benefits us in the whole run of revenues. And that's bringing back to the city. So, I bring up things like bollards, I bring up things about street closures, I bring up things that that on our side, I think we can work on and waive, or we can loosen it a lot. And I think those are instrumental to things of success like your farmers market, like Music on Mill, activities and concerts and things like that. So I'm excited that Councilmember Aradona Savage brought that up, because I definitely think that it's a benefit for both of us.
Sounds like an invitation to
That
come back.
sounds like he wants to work on it too. I think we're good to go. You said that, right?
Thank you all
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
I appreciate your time.
Thanks for the partnership. All right, next item, North-South Railroad Spur Multi-Use Path. Ms. Seiler.
No, that's not working. Is it working? Now
Yep.
it is. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Shelley Seiler, Deputy Engineering and Transportation Director, and with me is Vanessa Spartan, Transportation Planner in our planning section. So we are here this afternoon to provide you with an update on the North-South Rail Spur Multi-Use Path Project. And as you'll see in the presentation, we've come up against some challenges regarding the location, and Vanessa will go through that, and then we will be asking the council for direction. This one? Which one did you hit?
Hello. Okay, there we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us here tonight. So as Shelley indicated, we'll be coming to you asking for your input as to how staff should proceed with this project. So this is a capital improvements project that aligns with 3 council performance measures, quality of life 3.26, to achieve a multimodal transportation system or 20-minute city where residents can walk, bicycle, or use public transit to meet all basic daily non-work needs. The Sustainable Growth and Development 4.7 to achieve or exceed council adoption standards for improved access and usability as documented in the Above and Beyond ADA plan, and the Safe and Secure Communities 1.08 to achieve a reduction in the number of fatal and serious injury crashes to 0. So what we're seeking tonight is direction on phase 1 of the North-South project. As you can see in the map on the right, it is approximately along the Union Pacific Spur Line corridor. The phase 1, as I'll get into a little bit more, runs from University to Baseline. What we're seeking direction on is the existing alignment has some challenges, and staff is recommending not to proceed with that alignment. But we do have an alternative route that we'll be presenting tonight as a potential option of how to utilize the funds. And then a third option would be a no-build scenario, which would mean that we would return the funds to Maricopa Association of Governments if we went that third route, third option. So a little bit of background on the project. It was in the Transportation Master Plan as a full 7-mile corridor running from Town Lake down to Knox, so almost the full city limits. From 2013 to 2015, we did a preliminary design project with the Maricopa Association of Governments for that full 7-mile corridor and did some cost estimating during that process. And that's how we determined the funding that we needed to acquire in order to move forward into design and construction. The project has been broken into 2 phases for design and construction. So phase 1, which we'll be talking about tonight, is for University to Baseline. We have about $500,000 of local funds for the design effort. About $2.3 million from federal dollars and congestion mitigation air quality funds with a local match from the fund. And then the phase 2 portion, which is a future year in the CIP, has a similar funding allocation of a local fund for design and then largely the federal funds for construction with a local match. The last time we took this to the public was almost a year ago now, October of 2018, and we did public meetings and online surveys to get input on the design as we were moving forward. Following that, we took those comments and we created what we considered our 30% design files and kind of preliminary 60%. And we started having conversations with Arizona Department of Transportation related to environmental and cultural resources, and then also with Union Pacific Railroad to determine how we're going to move into the design evaluation phases with them. So just a quick background on the project. So the Union Pacific Corridor, the Rail Spur Corridor, is a low use segment. Not very many businesses are actually utilizing this portion of the corridor. It does have some issues. We have pedestrian traffic that is considered trespassing along this corridor. And so that's one of the issues that both Tempe Police and Union Pacific Police have been dealing with over the years. It's a missing link in the transportation system. As we mentioned, it's an opportunity that we saw to span almost the full city limits with a multi-use path corridor. We were going to be focusing on safety and crossing enhancements when the path would cross the arterial streets, looking at landscape enhancements as a means to beautify the corridor, controlling the public access points for how the pedestrian traffic would flow through that corridor and bicycle traffic. And then the two last points are kind of the key points moving forward in this presentation. We knew that we were going to be doing an easement acquisition. As we progressed in conversations with Union Pacific, it became more and more clear that that would likely be an annual easement cost. Also, there is a portion north of Southern Avenue that for about 550 feet that their right-of-way is too constrained, and they are encouraging us not to proceed to try and acquire an easement in that area and to find an alternative route. And then the last point is what I'm calling cultural resource testing, but it's the recommendation from Arizona Department of Transportation to do some archaeological testing along the corridor. So here's the facts of where we were when we first were estimating the cost from 2013 to 2015 and where we are today. So we were having discussions with Union Pacific with the idea that we would do one design agreement for the full corridor. That has since expanded to a design agreement for the full corridor plus every crossing, which adds up to about $225,000. There are additional decisions that have, or recommendations that have been made in terms of the crossing treatments and design costs associated with that. The Union Pacific would charge for that, which has increased the cost significantly. The easement cost is still unknown because according to federal laws, we can't do that until we enter into 60% designs, and we can't do 60% designs until we enter into agreements with Union Pacific. So that's why we don't know the easement costs. The annual crossing maintenance, originally that was not a condition, and now they're talking about additional costs for every crossing along the corridor that we would be maintaining. There are some non-Union Pacific corridor costs that we were adding to the corridor in terms of lighting and landscaping and the actual design and construction of the pathway. Those are still consistent numbers today. And then the environmental costs, we were anticipating monitoring, and as we went further into the investigation process, we realized that we were going to have to be doing some testing as well. And then the annual corridor maintenance, we had always estimated $10,000 for our maintenance costs as far as maintaining the path corridor. So as you can see, the line in red at the bottom was the original budget that is in our CIP for about $3 million with $10,000 annually for maintenance. The new additional costs are doubling that figure at $3.3 million and $50,000 in annual maintenance. So total corridor cost of $6.4 million with $60,000 in annual costs. So with that being said, and the conversation with Union Pacific to suggest that we start looking at alternatives, staff went ahead and added at a high level, started looking at an alternative route. And so that's what we're bringing to you all today to consider. As you can see on the map, the red line is the original proposed route. The blue would be a potential alternative route, and I'll walk you through different phases of it. The dashed blue lines are where we have other bike routes in the area. So Hardy north of Broadway, and then for College south of 13th. From University to Broadway, we knew going into this project that the Union Pacific corridor was too constrained, so we were always going to use Farmer Avenue. We'd already determined that back in 2015. So on that street, we'll be doing street markings for better protection or better safety for the bicycles. And then at 13th Street, we would use the existing bike lanes and sidewalk on 13th Street. On Roosevelt, there are bike lanes in the area, but there's also a center turn lane that's underutilized. So we think there's potentially some opportunities to do some traffic calming and enhance the safety on that corridor. As you cross Broadway and we head south, we get more into the industrial area that's also part of the Innovation District area. As we move further south, basically when we were looking at the alternative route, we were going to trigger that Union Pacific right-of-way process. And so we were trying to avoid that. So the alternative is to enhance the bike lanes where we can, so widen them where we can along this corridor. And then there's a lot of sidewalk gaps in Roosevelt corridor in this area, so we could also fill some sidewalk gaps in this area. Alameda Crossing was part of the north-south corridor, so we have separated that out as a maintenance project, still handle the Alameda Crossing as a separate project from this one. When you get further south to Southern, there was some concern related to having the bicycles travel along Southern Avenue. So what we originally are proposing is that there's a physically abandoned spur line in that area. And so there's an opportunity to talk to the property owners to acquire an easement in that area. We would both have to talk to the property owners and Union Pacific, as they have an easement existing in that area. If we were to go this route, then we could also create a bicycle and pedestrian node in this area. When we presented this same presentation to Transportation Commission, they also recommended that we look at just going further south of Southern and going through the neighborhood as another bicycle route through the neighborhood. I think that's something that if we were receiving council's direction to move forward, we would take that to the public and discuss those as different options and what the community would feel most comfortable with. As you move south of Southern, we are utilizing the Kyrene corridor. Originally, we were planning to do more on the east side of the roadway, but again, trying to avoid kind of Union Pacific, and there's an SRP corridor in that area, a utility corridor in that area. We have two options that we're proposing that we would also want to take to the public. One is to create a two-way, what's called a cycle track, so a protected two-way bicycle path on the west side of the street. And then the other option would be to widen the bicycle lanes and add a physical protection to the bicycle lanes in that area. When you get south of, or when you get to baseline, we'd be taking the traffic along the north side of the sidewalk, the bicycle and pedestrian traffic, and we'd move it over to the east side of the railroad and then create a bicycle and pedestrian signalized crossing at that location. That then would provide the connection to the Western Canal Path and Kiwanis Park at that location. This area, as we heard earlier, is an area of safety concern, so we'd like to explore some safety enhancements in this area, both for the bicycle and pedestrian traffic as well as the vehicles turning at the Kyrene area.
Councilmember Adams?
Yes, I just have a question about this proposal. Would we keep the amount of traffic lanes, or would we reduce the amount of traffic lanes?
They're just very wide right now.
Okay.
So we can actually just narrow the lanes down to a more manageable size and then utilize the roadway space.
And what kind of barriers are you referring to?
So we can explore different options. We could do something as small as just, buffering with pavement markings and things like that, or we could do a curb or other types of features. That I think that's something that we'd want to take to the public and get some thoughts and ideas on that.
Those sound like great solutions. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So, with that said, the staff recommendations are to consider the new alignment or potentially if council decides to close the project. We don't see the existing alignment as a really feasible route moving forward. So if we were to proceed with the new alignment, we believe that we could bid this project in 22-23. We'd be repurposing the MAG funds for construction for this effort. We took this presentation to Transportation Commission earlier this month, and as I mentioned, they had a couple recommendations for us to explore that we agreed with. And depending upon how you all say for us to move forward today, we'll be coming back to you related to the phase 2, which runs south of baseline down to Knox for consideration.
Vanessa, thank you. To the point of when we bid it in 22-23, when would the completion date be if we did do that?
So I would say, we could probably construction within a year. So it would probably be within that same fiscal year, right?
And I know that you guys, our transportation staff and our government relations staff has been working with Union Pacific. I'm very disappointed that we're going to have to address our path because of Union Pacific, because we spent a lot of time on this already with some resources. But I do think that it's really important that we continue to move forward with an alternative route. If that's the council's pleasure, because I think it's something that we always are looking for, that connectivity from north to south. And I think the initial thought that we had was great. We hit a roadblock with Union Pacific, unfortunately, but I think we have an alternative option for us that's in front of us that's manageable, that we can work. So, Councilman Navarro.
Thank you, Mayor. Now, thank you all for bringing this up. I mean, this is what first, when I got on council, I was like, man, we got to do this. This is one of the things that we should start. And it's funny to see it now 12 years later. So, but I'm glad we're there. I'm glad we're, and keeping it alive too. But, and obviously, I think, like the mayor said, that, our plans to have that as a straight corridor would have been tremendous. I knew there was probably going to be that challenge with Union Pacific on changing the game whenever they want to. So I do like the alternative route. I think it's smart especially on Roosevelt and on Kyrene roads. I think you do have the ability to really make some buffer bike lanes. And if we're talking about our bike community and doing something smart with the street that's not going to impact the street and it's going to make it safer, those are probably the two smartest decisions out there, is Roosevelt and Kyrene, because you have the ability to do that. So I think that's extremely smart. I think we should, I hopefully, those in my mind, if we do that alternative route, that would be something that I would hope we spend a little time on in terms of how we do it, because it's an opportunity to showcase something really smart. Because I don't feel we're going to get a lot of backlash because I don't feel we're going to impact the street at all. We're just going to make it safer. So once again, I think it's just a perfect time to showcase something really smart as we go forward with that. But other than that, the phase 2 is as we go down the road. We'll tackle that beast later. I think it's just great that we got to Kiwanis Park, because there are abilities once you get to Kiwanis Park, the other pathways are there, and I'm just thrilled to death that we got there this far. Other than that, on the alternative route, if we have to go straight Union Pacific and a hold up on that little finger from Union Pacific, then we go down to Dwight Park about, and then just cross it over. So let's try the first one first. If not, we'll go down.
Great, thank you. Councilman Ardano Savage, then Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Vanessa and Shelley. I kind of like Joel, though I wasn't on the council, but I was like on the bicycle advisory committee back in the day. And it's so funny it's kind of like talking about Broadway when we were doing that streetscape. So it's been a really long time. Are you trying to age me? He's trying to age me. It's been a while. That's right. That's true. But, I got to tell you, I cannot tell you how disappointing it is. I mean, I don't like to really talk negatively about any entity or organization, but I mean, the additional one-time cost, I don't even know what to say to that. And I was actually looking forward to being able to spruce up those areas that I thought would be really beneficial to everybody, because it was a really wide area where the railroad is. But, being what it is, I think the need to have something on the west side like that is really important. We've been talking about that for, a really long time. So I certainly support trying to figure out a great way to make it work that makes sense. I think even the fact that it's a little further west is probably not a bad idea. I think that's kind of fine too. So, I'm hopeful that everybody along that pathway will be in favor of making that happen, because I think that we've seen nothing but really great successes when we're able to put in pathways and how great they are. But it did make me think about something, Shelley, in regards to when we talk about transportation in a bigger scale. And I know Kate Borders mentioned it earlier about the trickle down of federal monies, and they're talking a lot about infrastructure now, but the cost to actually do a railroad crossing, I don't think anybody realized how expensive that is to do, regardless of what the railroad charges. But we know it's a really big expense, and maybe that's one thing that we need to really talk about a little bit more at a larger level, to try to get some federal funding to help us do that, and maybe other communities too. And I don't know about the environmental testing fee, but I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to say thank you for looking for an alternative. Thank you for trying to find a way to make this work, because I think it's going to be a really good thing for our residents overall. So I appreciate it. And I support your idea of moving forward with an alternative route.
Councilmember Adams.
Yes, I also support moving forward with this project. I like the alternate route you came up with. I like the smaller lanes. I realize that on Kyrene, they are really large lanes, and so we can keep the number of traffic lanes, making them smaller, and then also having a bike path that is safer. We see we get a lot of council communicators on people that have been hit on bicycles and things like that. So whatever we can do to make that commute safer I'm very supportive of. And I'm looking forward to riding my bicycle to downtown on this new route. So thank you so much. Great project, good work. You really checked all the boxes for me on this project.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Shelley. All right, next item. 2020 census. We have some great residents that are volunteering their time, Mr. Joaquin Rios and Ms. Elizabeth Kling, as well as Nikki.
All right. I think. Can you hear me like this? Is this good? What'd you say? Hold it up. Oh.
For the audience.
Hello. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Joaquin Rios.
And I'm Elizabeth Kling.
And we are the co-chairs of the city's Complete Count Committee this year. And before we get started, we have some of our fellow members of the Complete Count Committee here in the audience, and we would like for them to stand and be recognized. If any of our fellow.
Hey, thank you for your work.
They're a great group of people who have put a lot of time and effort into volunteering for this effort. And also Vianney Celestino, who is our assigned partnership specialist from the U.S. Census Bureau, I believe is here as well. And she's been a great resource for us and for the city to help us make sure we get this effort right.
So as Joaquin said, we are going to be giving you guys an update on our outreach and education efforts. But before we do that, we just want to give you guys a quick recap on just some of the basics of the census. The Constitution requires that every 10 years, there is a complete count of every U.S. citizen and not a citizen. And this is really critical to the city of Tempe because the money that comes from the federal government funds projects such as transportation projects, affordable housing vouchers, and a whole lot more. So it is estimated that for every person within the city of Tempe that is counted, we get about $3,000 in federal funding. So as we look forward, our big deadline is April 1st, 2020, which is Census Day. And then following that throughout September or through May to June, the census is going to be following up with people who have not been counted. So this year, there are going to be 9 questions on the census, and there will not be a question regarding citizenship. For the first time ever, people are going to be able to fill out the census online, and they're anticipating about 70% of the population is going to do that, but they will still have phone and email responses as an option. One of the things that comes up a lot is people asking, how are we counting college students because of ASU? So basic rule of thumb is if you are living here and going to school here, you're counted here regardless of where your parents live. And this includes international students. So students who live off campus but attend ASU will be filling out the census. And the Census Bureau is going to be doing their own count for the students who live on campus. In addition, homeless individuals are going to be counted separately by the Census Bureau.
All right. So in addition to sort of the efforts that are taking place here in Tempe, there's a lot of layers to the effort. At the national level, there's going to be a multi-million-dollar advertising campaign, and the federal government through the Census Bureau, in addition to sort of advertising, marketing, and that sort of thing, are going to have a robust website with different resources for local governments. They're opening offices. The closest office to Tempe is one that is existing in Mesa. And they've also hired partnership specialists, staff like Vianney, who we introduced earlier, who are there to provide that sort of staff level support for cities like ours. In addition, the state of Arizona has convened their own Complete Count Committee. The governor has appointed 23 people to the state Complete Count Committee, and that committee is being chaired by the director of the Arizona Office of Tourism. And yeah, so in addition to the regional and local effort, in addition to those efforts, there's regional and local efforts that we're going to tell you about tonight.
So within the region, which is basically Maricopa County, the cities and towns have contributed to a regional push that's being run through MAG the Maricopa Association of Governments, and the total contributions for this equal about $2 million. So there was an agency that was given the contract for this, and that is Reister. They're based in Phoenix, and they've already launched a website that is optimized for viewing on your mobile devices, and it's also available in Spanish. And across the board, what you're going to be seeing, because this is social media, everybody has to have a hashtag. It's going to be ICount2020. So that's been adopted regionally as well as locally within Tempe. So what you can see here is an example of what Reister has put together as far as some of their marketing. And then this is another look at what you guys are going to be coming out. So you can see it's trying to be diverse. It's trying to address different populations, different areas, trying to be as comprehensive as possible. And I get that this is really hard to see in detail, but what you can see is a breakdown of what this $2 million investment is going to get regionally. So you can see that about 34% of the budget is going to marketing, 19% to TV, thank you. But the goal for Reister is that they want to reach 90% of the people in the region with advertising and billboards at least 20 times between this fall and next spring.
Now we'll highlight some of the efforts here in Tempe. We have a great committee of 25 volunteers who have been appointed by you all to serve. And we've been meeting monthly since December. We've organized ourselves into 4 subcommittees to try and make sure that we have particular plans for particular focus areas. And those subcommittees are education, business, faith and nonprofits, and special populations. And our work as we've been putting together our outreach plans has been informed by data. We definitely want to thank William Mancini and the CGIS team who have been very helpful to us using the Census Bureau's maps and looking at the areas that had lower response rates in 2010 to try and make sure we have a concentrated effort in those areas. In addition, we're working closely with ASU to reach off-campus ASU students, and we have an ASU representative on the Complete Count Committee as well to help make sure that the city and ASU are working closely together in this effort. And in addition, ASU has its own committee working on outreach to students on all 4 of its campuses around the valley.
Vice Mayor Kuby.
Rios, I just have a question about ASU because as I recall that the census wants people to be counted where they go to school, not where they live. Mm-hmm. So if an ASU student lived in California, they should be counted here in Tempe. Am I right? That hasn't changed.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And so ASU is going to have an aggressive way of trying to, when students register for classes or informing them, and that's a huge population that we could count or not count.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Kuby, that's exactly right. This is a huge opportunity for us as Tempe to make sure that those students at ASU that should be appropriately counted as part of Tempe are counted as part of Tempe, who are part of our community using our services. And so I know ASU they've had a presence and had, I think, multiple members in attendance at our meetings and are working in close coordination with the committee and with the city going forward.
Thank you.
So let's talk about what we're actually doing right now, and then we're going to go into what's going to be happening in the months to come. So the Census Bureau is conducting address canvassing right now through mid-October, and they're going to be walking neighborhoods and knocking on doors just to verify addresses. This is not an actual count, but it's an important part of preparing for it. The city is reaching out to let individuals know there are job opportunities with the census. They're doing a lot of hiring, so this is a great opportunity for individuals in Tempe and the region if they're looking for employment opportunities to achieve that. And then our committee is planning extensive outreach activities that are going to be starting next month and going through 2020. So if you had a chance to look at your packet, you'll see that we have a comprehensive communication plan that is in there. It's everything that we have come up with so far, but this is a flexible moving document. If things come up that we see that we can add, we're going to be responding to that and doing that as well. But it's important to realize that since there's already a huge national and regional effort, what Tempe is doing is very much a grassroots sort of person-to-person approach, such as putting flyers in kids' backpacks to go home, putting flyers up at laundromats, that type of thing. So we're really trying to look at what are Tempe's hard-to-reach populations and how do we get that information to them. The main message that we're trying to carry to people is that participating in the census is easy, it is secure, and it is important. So those are kind of our 3 key points that we're driving home. We're using social media, we're using email, we're using a lot of the city's resources to reach out to people. We're going to have ads on the solid waste trucks, but we're really trying to make this a community effort. So if you guys look up at your desks, we have examples of English and Spanish coloring books, some of the flyers that we're going to be using, just to let you guys know that we're trying to be as comprehensive as possible. Our first event is going to be the Tempe Tardeada on October 6th, but we have already had committee members who have volunteered to go to Tempe Community Action Agency, and they've put flyers in the food boxes that are being distributed.
So you as council members and as leaders in our community play a crucial role in the effort to get out the word about the census. And we'd love your help amplifying the message. There's all kinds of things you can do. We've got census shirts you can wear at events. We have a hashtag, ICount2020. And would encourage you to use that in your social media posts and feel free to share social media posts from the broader campaign and to talk to everybody about how participating in the census is easy, secure, and important. And in terms of any residents that might be interested in participating as well, they're going to get a lot of information coming up about the census. They can sign up for census update emails either from the regional effort at icount2020.info or from the city of Tempe at tempe.gov/enews, and there they can sign up for listservs and get access to the websites at the federal, regional, and municipal levels. And so that is our update for now, and we'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Hey, Joaquin, Elizabeth, thank you so much for help co-chairing this. And I want to also recognize council members Robin Ardona Savage and Councilman Navarro for helping vet all the applications that we've had. And I want to thank those in the audience and those at home for helping participate in this, because it's a lot to ask of you to volunteer for over a year. And I want to thank the entire council for everything that they've done to help promote this. As we all know, making sure everybody's getting counted is so crucial. Not only is it for federal funding for us, for everything from community development block grants to federal, also by getting the right type of count, it's going to affect our delegation. We should be getting another congressional seat, which is something that I think that will help us as well, and it helps us with state revenues. It also helps with our school district. So thank you so much for what you're doing. It's such an important aspect. I mean, the Constitution states that we have to count every single person living in this country, everybody. And we're happy, as Vice Mayor mentioned, about making sure that we count the Arizona State University students, because we have not done that in the past. And I'm very thankful that we do not have the question on there that the Supreme Court ruled that the citizen question not be part of the survey. I think that's something that will help us as well. And I think it's upon all of us to make sure that we do our part to get the information out social media wise to make sure everybody knows. So thank you. Councilmember Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank you both and everyone on your team for doing this work. It is a very big job, a very long job, and you guys are doing it for free. So I'm very proud that Tempe has such dedicated citizens who would take on this important task. And good work to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you guys very much for your work.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
And again, thank you for all your work. And I know that the whole citizenship question and the legal case that followed, a number of cynics among us have said that there's been damage done already. I mean, even without the question, that we might see a chilled response. So what are the ways? I mean, you're obviously going to be reaching out through faith-based institutions and canvassing, but are there any innovative, creative ways people are thinking about in approaching communities that may be living in the shadows and may not want to report because they don't believe they don't believe the confidentiality of the information?
Mayor Mitchell, Councilmember Cubie, I think that's a really important point, and I think it's definitely worth calling out as a reality of the situation. And I think we're trying our best to try and have a sort of person-to-person type strategy, because as when we were looking at the slide where there's all of these different levels, the federal, state, regional, and local sort of efforts, I think that is sort of where the local effort fits in best. But, also, you look at the regional effort, and, there was that slide that had sort of the pie chart of the way the advertising is being spent, and the fact that there is going to be a significant investment in trying to reach out through sort of non-English language media and stuff like that. I think, it's all going to have to go right to try and mitigate that dynamic that you identified.
Thank you, Mr. Rios.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next item, the solid waste rate study recommendations.
Ready. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Rosa Inchausti, Director of Municipal Utilities in Trump. And with us today, we have Kyle Stevens from Stantec Consulting to my left. And the far left is Steve White from Municipal Utilities, our Planning and Research Analyst. As you may recall, on August 27th, we gave you a comprehensive update on all our solid waste services, knowing that we would eventually come back in September with our solid waste rate study update. We are looking to you today just to share with you the rate study update, but also to receive any feedback regarding the services that we're updating you on, in addition to the very important public outreach. So with that, we'll get started.
Thank you, Rosa. Tonight we have three objectives. The first is to review our rate study process, but more importantly, our cost of service analysis. It's really important to kind of spend some time on this because it really details and really frames well what the key drivers are for the rate adjustments that we'll be proposing tonight. Following that, we'll be outlining our public outreach plan as well as timelines for when we may be coming back to council for potential adoption of these recommended rates.
Perfect. Good evening, council members. I'd like to walk you through the rate study that we've conducted for the city. But first, I'd like to just take you over some of the background for the study. So the last study that was conducted by my firm was in 2017, and there were several key findings of that study in that point in time that will be relevant for our discussion this evening. So that particular study created the basis for the SMART program, which is for residential customers to be able to choose their disposal capacity to right-size it effectively for what they need. Additionally, it found that commercial service was under collecting with regards to the cost of service. And the recommendation as part of that study was to continue to gather detailed information on cost tracking and billing data. And ultimately, that was one of the limiting factors, was the data that we had with regards to how far we could take that rate study and the recommendations as part of it. With regards to the study that we've conducted this year, there are several key components of it. The first component is the revenue requirement, and simply put, this is the amount of money that you need on an annual basis to run solid waste within the city. Additionally, moving from the revenue requirement is the cost of service. So this is where we take a detailed look at the expenses to understand the differences between services like residential, commercial front load, roll off. And then the last component of the study is the actual setting of rates. What are the individual rate dynamics and objectives we would like to accomplish? So with that, the main overarching objective that was present as we got into the study this year was an opportunity to balance costs. So there were advances made with regards to, again, that tracking of the data and being able to understand the cost generation in solid waste, which gives us the ability to move the rates forward. The first component, I'll go into some detail with the next slides, the revenue requirement. So there's some key data inputs that go into this. We use the audited 2018 financial information, 19 actual results, and your 2020 budget, as well as adopted capital investment projects. In addition to that, there were some assumptions that we put within our model to recognize some of the key dynamics happening within the service area. The first one, recycling costs. The recycling market has fundamentally changed in the last year. It now costs us money to process recycling material. That has been included as one of our assumptions. Additionally, we've accelerated vehicle replacements within our projections in order to ensure that we're replacing vehicles when their useful lives conclude. With regards to containers, we would like to get it to a sustainable rate of container replacement within 5 years. And then also that last bullet point is that we would like to be nimble with regards to different investments that may allow us to stabilize cost in the future. And so this first slide is a dashboard view of the model that projects solid waste costs for the next 10 years. The particular view that you're seeing here is a diagnostic view. This is if we keep the rates current and revenues that they provide for the next 10 years. And there's a few key dynamics that come up when you do that. So with no revenue rate adjustments, what we'll see is very similar to your personal bank account. That yellow line is the amount of cash going out of the fund. The black line below it is the amount of cash going in. You can see there is a structural deficit between the two. And the way that you would fund that would be the use of reserve balances. And what this chart shows is without an adjustment, we would be out of cash by 2022. And it would additionally impair our ability to borrow any money. The next slide, we have calculated a potential sustainable plan. And so what we have calculated in here are what level of revenue adjustments would be required in order to provide financial sustainability over the next 10 years. And what you can see up there is now in 2021 and 2022, there are 7% increases, followed by the projection period from 23 forward, a 2% annual adjustment, so inflationary adjustments. And what that does for us is in that chart in the middle, you can now see those lines of cash in and cash out are on top of each other. So that is a sustainable paradigm. And our reserve balances are now meeting the minimum target each and every year of the projection. That allows us to potentially look at strategic options. This next slide tells the story of how we got to where we are today. What I'm showing up here in blue is the overall inflation levels in the US. In orange is the inflation levels for solid waste services. And the gap between the two shows you that solid waste typically inflates at a higher level than the general inflation we see in the economy. In the dashed green line is the experience of a typical residential customer within the community. And so from 2009 through 2015, there were no solid waste rate increases. During that time, costs were contained through management decisions as well as switches such as to natural gas for vehicles. Additionally, those services and the level of service being provided in the community were enhanced. And so you can see in 2016, that was unsustainable on a go-forward basis. And so rate increases were enacted at that point in time in order to bring the revenues in alignment with costs. Yes.
Councilmember Adams?
Just I want to point out that from 2009 to 2015, there were no rate increases. So I guess in the future, if we're anticipating going up in rates, I would like to see small increases in the future instead of this flat line, and then we have to go up so much more at once.
Yes.
So that's my feedback.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
What you can see there is with the adjustments that have been made since 2016 to 2019, we're starting to get back into alignment with the overall inflation that we see in the industry on a national level. The takeaway is the existing rate revenues being provided by rates will not support the program on a go-forward basis if we were to look at sustainable levels of vehicle replacements and container replacement levels. So additional funding would be required over time. Next, I'd like to move into the second component, the cost of service. And so there are several key data and assumption points we'll need to go over. First of all, the city incurs fundamentally different costs to serve different customers. And so I've included up on this slide some of the primary ways that you serve your customers from a solid waste perspective. You can see they're residential. And then on the commercial side, there is front load and roll-off service within the community. And this analysis, as we go through it, will provide a cost basis for rates as we move to the last component of the analysis, as well as reveal some of the cost drivers within the fund. The analysis we went through fundamentally started with the fiscal year 2020 budget. And what we did is we went through line by line, cost center by cost center, and got the right staff in the room to understand how those costs are generated. And fundamentally within solid waste, you've got two ways that services are being provided. You've got the collection side, where you're fundamentally going out to pick up the refuse or recycling container. And then you've got the disposal, where we're getting rid of the material. And so we went through each particular cost center. So residential refuse is one of the larger service lines, as well as recycling and commercial front load and commercial roll-off. And what that did is essentially created buckets of cost, if you will, for each of those individual service lines. The results of those, starting with this pie chart, show us the buckets of cost as they are generated to fund solid waste in Tempe. The overall budget for 2020 was roughly $20.1 million. Of that, through the cost of service, was identified that $9.9 million of a residential refuse service, our residential recycling was 2.2, an additional cost related to alley maintenance of 900,000, commercial roll-off 1.2, and then commercial front load is 5.9 million. This next slide will now compare the current revenue generation levels as of the last fiscal year to the cost of service by service line. And what we want to understand here is how in alignment we are with the cost to provide a service versus the revenue we're collecting. So if I start to my left with residential service, what you can see there is we're relatively in alignment. The costs are a little bit higher than the current revenues. If I move to the middle section, that is commercial front load, what we can see there is current rate revenues of 4.4 million. The cost is 5.1, and so what we're seeing there is the cost is higher than the revenue currently. And then the last one is commercial roll-off, which currently shows that our revenue collection is slightly higher than the underlying cost. What I'd like to do now is move to the final section, which is the rate discussion. So there's several key principles that we need to talk about when we go into rate making. First and foremost, the rates need to recover the necessary revenues that allow us to provide service. Additionally, those cost of service results we just talked about should be taken into consideration and should form the basis for rate making. Customer behavior is also going to be a key component of rate making. We want to make sure we're making decisions that enhance customer behavior. Additionally, this is an enterprise fund. So solid waste fees only pay for solid waste services, the primary funding mechanism for these expenses. This next slide is a detailed breakdown of the cost components that go into primary residential service. And so if I start with the blue and orange section of these bar charts, they show for the different size disposal containers. You can see a 48 gallon, a 65, and a 96 300 there. The collection costs are universal across those three containers. But if we move to the next section, which is green right above that, that's the disposal cost. And so as your container size increases, you get a larger allocation of disposal cost. And then on the last section, the purple, the $1.65 on top, is the recycling cost that has been included due to the recycling market's change. Now, it is important to note that this is a snapshot in time. So this is reflective of the current market. We do believe that there is some thoughts out there that the market could stabilize and change in the future.
Councilmember Adams.
Explain the rationale for thinking that the market will stabilize more in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a relatively dynamic market as of late. There's been some pretty large, momentous changes in it. There are some thoughts with regards to the federal government that's investing in recycling capacity that may come online to allow some alleviation of the pressures we're seeing.
Okay, and then I think Mr. Miano had mentioned before about also more internal in the U.S., like paper mills and things like that.
Yes, the investment specifically here in the U.S., which would make it easier for the transfer and things like that instead of relying abroad.
Okay, yes. Thank you.
So now what I would like to do is walk you through the full rate update and impact to residential customers. The primary service that your residential customers have is the 96 gallon or 300, which is on the far right of this slide. The current rate is $25.60. So what we're talking about with the cost of service adjustments that's been made within the rate study is a $2.04 increase monthly. You can additionally see the smaller increases that would be associated with a 65 or 48 gallon can to the left of that. And again, the key drivers behind that are delayed rate adjustments over time, as well as recycle market changes as of late, and deferred asset replacement. The next slide.
One second.
Yes.
ViceMayor QB.
Here you go. So I understand and see that this is recovery of cost only numbers, and where if you use a 48 gallon, 65, 96, 300, you're paying for the cost of treatment or for that service. But I wonder if we shouldn't think about also putting a price signal in, or maybe a pay as you go. What is it called? There's another phrase for it. Tony, remind me.
Pay as you throw?
Pay as you throw, right. Model. Introduce something where we could really encourage people to take the 48 gallon, which we know is cheaper, and offer some kind of incentive. Is that something we could look at or consider?
Absolutely. It is something council can consider. I mean, basically as staff, what we're recommending is the cost of service that based on disposal capacity of those different size containers. If it was a decision of city council to do something outside of cost of service based on the values of the community and wanting to emphasize a smaller container, or that is absolutely something that council could consider.
Councilman Adams.
Follow up on that. What percentage of the containers, the smaller containers, are being used now since we've introduced them?
Currently, between the 48 gallon and 65 gallon, we have 2,700 people in the SMART program.
That's what percentage of total containers?
A little under 10%. We have 33,000 residential customers.
We already use it.
Yeah, okay. Good, thank you. What did you say?
I mean, the SMART program is designed to help incentivize people to go to the smaller cans.
Correct. I mean, it provides equity.
We're already
If you're,
incentivizing that.
You know, a single person or just two people in a household.
And one of the challenges,
We're
though,
not
is
incentivizing it. It's based on that's what it costs. So it's not. No, I mean,
true, but you're
cost
paying,
recovery.
but you're also paying less to use
Right.
that.
Right.
So you're doing it both. I mean, yeah, it's cost recovery, but you can't lose sight of the fact that it costs our residents less to get a 48 gallon container versus a 65, and it shows it right here.
Right. It's not a value laden cost. It's based on recovery costs, and so we could, and other cities do this to incentivize it even more. Like you said, only 10% do this. If you want to get more, we need to either get the word out, or we could offer more of a carrot, and we could have the change in rate be less for the people that are doing 48 gallon to incentivize more people to do it, because 1,000 isn't very much.
Councilmember Chin.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we get down the road about just the cost of containers, I'm sensitive to it also. I'm a resident, and absolutely that's important to me. But at the same time, I think I would encourage you to let staff play this out, because it doesn't stop at the cost of containers, because they have to look at the routes and what that means in terms of service. And how does that increase days of service that's needed to collect everything? How does that affect that? And I know, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure that operationally, there's a component that we have to factor in when we look at that.
Councilmember, we're using the same vehicles and driving the same routes to pick up a 48, 65, or 96, or even a shared 300 gallon.
If we change the composition of the size of containers, that could impact the routes and the demand.
Sure, because you're collecting different tonnage on those routes. So, and that's part of our.
Less work, so less.
Yeah. Sorry.
Less gas expended, less work. So.
But you'd still have to go those routes, though.
Yeah.
Right. So how would it be less? I mean, you still have to do the routes, so I'm confused. I mean, you still have to, I mean, you might
Less in the landfill.
not have to go to the dump as much, transfer station, but you still have to do those routes.
Correct, but you could potentially collect more containers per route because you're collecting less tonnage.
Because it's a smaller container. Yep. Councilmember Ardano Savage.
No, I was just going to agree with Arlene. I like the idea of kind of letting staff play this one out and see how it goes. I think this was, really good advice and wisdom to figure out how we can do it and move forward with it. Because I told Joel, if we go as pay as you throw, I'm going to put all my stuff in his trash can. So.
Well, I mean, we haven't even talked about the recycling, which I know you're going to get to, because if we have a more robust recycling program, because been a challenge in it, if you go to a smaller can, the idea is having more people recycle. And that's, I mean, honestly, that's part of it too.
That's absolutely correct.
So I think let's go ahead and finish and then we can have more discussion.
Yeah, I would just say that one of the things with recycling market change, we're looking at increasing, redoubling our efforts on our advertising as far as what you can put in your blue barrel, because contamination is the biggest cost for us. From a recycle processing standpoint, we want the least amount of processing possible. We do have about 13% over our last 4 quarters is what our contamination rate is now, and we are one of the best in the valley, which is fantastic news, but we can always do better. So that's definitely something we want to look at with our single stream recycling program.
Perfect. So I'll continue on. One of the other programs that we analyzed as part of the rate study was a current pilot program that you're running, which is green organics. And so this is a program in which a customer residential can avail themselves of a third container, a green container for green organics. There's currently no rate in place for the container. The recommendation that's coming out of this study is to begin to charge a rate for that container. And this would essentially enhance customer behavior. So the thought behind this is if you charge a marginal rate for it, you would then condense that service down to an efficient route where you would have customers that really are seeing the value of those containers. We have calculated as part of the analysis that the minimum cost to collect curbside would be $5.55 based on a limited service for this. And so that is our recommendation with green organics. Now I'd like to change gears and talk about commercial. This slide is in regards to commercial front load service. And so again, the last rate study identified that this was under cost recovery. This rate study has again identified it's under cost recovery. It's important to note a couple things. First of all, this is a competitive market. And so the city of Tempe is providing this service, but you are also providing it with other private actors in the market. Additionally, there have been changes to this market over time, and so legislation at the state level has changed some of the monopolistic customers that you had before, specifically apartment buildings. And so those have now been opened up to the private market. What we have seen is this is a stabilization, but it's something that we want to continue to analyze. Additionally, this rate structure has not been updated recently.
Yeah. Vice Mayor
So can
Cuban.
we go back to the commercial front load issue? We know that SB 1079 had a really deleterious effect on our bottom line. We've succeeded in really enhancing our commercial pickup of recycling, but when that bill was enacted, it basically opened up the market, recycling market, to private haulers. And those private haulers came in, they offered some sweet deals, and now a number of commercial businesses are seeing those sweet deals go away, and they're starting to talk to us. And I know, Tony, we talked about this, that you guys have been really out there talking to commercial establishments to get their business back. I wonder, though, we talked about in our development agreements in a retreat that we would include a number of factors that people could choose from, that we would ask from development agreements. One of them, I think, was to have recycling, and that was sort of a no-brainer. They're all doing it anyway. But I wonder, and maybe we could have this brought up, I don't know if it's a retreat or we can talk about it now. Judy, tell me if I'm wrong to talk about it now. But I wonder if we can add to that in development agreements a request or a requirement that they use our services.
I know that, yes. So I know that we currently actually work with our developers. Michael Ulmer does a great job of outreach in partnership and letting them know what our rates are. And that's just part of the development process. I know that they're building that marketing strategy as new businesses, especially with the urban core plan, looking to have better partnership with our businesses just to let them know, because we know that we do offer a competitive rate and it helps to support our smaller businesses. So we partner with our developers. Beyond that, that would be up to the council for direction on any of that.
Because we know when a business or a development uses Tempe's waste services, they're contributing to the community and they're helping to build up our community. That seems like if a company is coming to us and wanting to build, that we should make that point really clear that we expect, I don't know if it's a requirement or a recommendation for them to do business with us, and we can show that it'll be more cost effective in the process.
Excuse me, Vice Mayor, members of council. I think it would be useful perhaps to have a separate agenda item specific to development agreements and including this provision. We'd be happy to take a look at that and come back.
Okay, thank you. If we could follow up, that'd be great.
Perfect. The second way in which you provide commercial service is, this is front load. So our recommendations with regards to front load are to advance dynamic pricing of front load rates. And what this fundamentally means is you pay for what service is required at the premise. This will require, though, as these changes are made, clear communication to some of those customers that are affected. The secondary line of service with regard to commercial is through roll-off. Roll-off is currently, as noted in the cost of service, collecting its cost of service. So the recommendation for roll-off is to hold the rate flat. Additionally, replacement of vehicles and containers will ensure the sustainability of this operation.
Thank you, Kyle. As part of our public outreach, we've worked extensively with our neighborhood services as well as our public information office to put together a robust plan and communication and outreach to our not just our residents, but also our commercial customers. Part of that includes the development, something unique this year, of materials and advertisements that were converted to easy English, but then also translated to Spanish. So to help broaden our scope and outreach. So in addition to that, those materials will be emailed to boards and commissions, prior rate study participants, neighborhood and homeowners associations. Will be putting out press releases, e-news distributions, social media posts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Explore accounts. Obviously, there will be print media as well in Tempe Today, Wrangler, and so forth. We've also given presentations to the Sustainability Commission as well as the Neighborhood Advisory Commission, and soon we'll also be presenting to the Mayor's Commission on Disability Concerns. And one of the major outreach are two public meetings. Our first will be Thursday, October 3rd, right here at the Tempe History Museum, and then also Saturday, October 5th at 9:30 a.m. Right next door at the Tempe Public Library. Again, that's Thursday, October 3rd at 5:30 p.m. right here at the Tempe History Museum. During this time, we also have a public comment period that will be going from September 23rd to October 7th. Residents have an opportunity to attend our public meeting and provide public comment during that time, but we also have a dedicated website that provides all of the same materials that we'll be broadcasting, where they can ask questions, provide comments and feedback in that way as well. And of course, we'll be providing Mayor and Council with updates on all of the public comment and feedback that we received through our Friday packet.
Councilmember Adams?
Yes, this public outreach is a best practice, in my opinion. We're really reaching out to the neighborhoods and giving them the opportunity to participate on a lot of different levels. You have one on a Thursday evening, you have one on a Saturday, you translate it into Spanish. I know you did game night, attended that. You're going to the schools. This is the kind of public outreach that I really see as a best practice and would like to see continued in our community. So thanks so much for doing that.
Thank you.
You know, I thank you guys so much for putting this together. I know you met with all of us individually, and some of the things that I think that really boils down to where we are is a couple of things. One, the recycling cost rates have increased dramatically for us, and I know there's some new opportunities out there that we're exploring with some of the other cities in the valley, and we're trying to be innovative, as we discussed, with the other solutions in regards to how we get rid of some of the, the solid waste that we have. I know we're also, with what you're proposing is minimal, but also it will help us invest in our assets that we have not done in the last 7 years because of the downturn in the market and where we are. I also know there's been some unfortunate legislation that has inhibited our collection that was referenced earlier regarding multifamily and the front load containers. So I do think that we're on the right path. One thing is I would, because I asked this when we met, we measure ourselves to 8 benchmark cities. Even with what you're proposing, we are still the 3rd lowest out of the 8 benchmark cities that we compare ourselves to. One thing I do want to point out that's not in here is that we also, what we offer far compares more than what other cities offer, even at the lower rate. So there's a tremendous value that our residents see. Other cities are emulating what we have been doing with our solid waste, with the hazardous waste disposal that we have off of University, with the composting program that we're having that residents can come and help, and what we're seeing, how the effects of that. The recycling program, we're the first city in the valley to have curbside recycling, and we're looking at other ways to help expand that. So we're hitting a little glitch in that market. I think I'm very proud that, and I think I can speak for myself and hopefully this council, that we're not going to give up on the recycling. We think it's too important. But you've read in the papers recently, some other cities have done so. I think we're taking this head on, and I think, and I want to applaud our staff for doing that and looking for other ways that we could partner with regionally with the other communities that we talked about how we handle our solid waste. I want to thank you guys for that. I think it should not go unnoticed, but at some point it could be in a Friday packet. If you can show the comparison of the cities, even with the increase that we have, what we offer versus what our other cities that surround us don't offer, it's a tremendous value. And whether we meet with residents on all the different speaking things that we do on a continual basis, I meet with them. It's one of the top things we hear is how great our customers are, the service that we provide, especially with solid waste, to our residents in our community. The uncontained bulk pickup, twice every other month. The same thing with greens and trimmings and so forth. And the fact that you show your address, your water bill, you set access to go to the dump. If you did a major cleanup or what have you. Not every city does that, and I think that's something that I would like all of us to see that we could be in a Friday packet if that would be helpful, so that we can really. There's really no comparison, in my opinion. Even though even with what you're proposing, we'll still be the third lowest. But if you look everything in entirely, I think it's something that we should be really proud of.
Completely agree.
Councilmember Chin.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. This is one of our essential, fundamental services that we provide to our residents and to our businesses. I really appreciate how you are sensitive to keeping costs reasonable and fair as much as possible. So thank you for all of your work, to the entire team. If there is one recommendation that I could provide is, and we talked about recycling, we'll continue to recycle in Tempe because that's what we do. But if we could help educate our community, ourselves, and perhaps better define what some things are that should and should not be in the recycle bins, I think that's really important. We know to recycle, but I think there is often confusion about what type of plastic is allowed to go in there and absolutely what is not allowed to go in there. I've often, unfortunately, opened up my recycle bin, and some neighbors perhaps found it convenient to throw some things in my recycle bin that didn't belong there.
Brochure blame.
Yeah, that happened to me
blame
too.
it on
Same
the-
thing
blame
happened
it
to
on
me.
the neighbor.
Happened to me too.
Right. But I mean, we have to remind people, and because that action, that better recycling, that cleaner recycling, will then cost us all less, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
So 3 items I wanted to discuss. I know that there's a meeting that will be happening with Waste Management, and we've heard some other cities being concerned, I think concerned maybe that their waste management service, I'm not sure which one it was, might be not recycling the materials, but dumping them into the landfill. So I'm glad that you're meeting with Waste Management because we have to operate under trust but verify. So I'll be really eager to hear what the discussion is and if there can be an audit system set up so we can make sure they're indeed recycling our recyclables, because we pay so much more for it. It'd be really a waste of taxpayer money to not have it be recycled. The second thing is Recyclops. I know you're looking into Recyclops to see what the partnership is like with the city of Phoenix. That's a company that picks up all sorts of plastics, every bit of plastic except really hard shell plastic, and then helps a city to divert a lot of waste from the landfill and from recycling when there's no market for.
Is that the one in Idaho?
No, it's ASU developed company. Students developed it. So I know they're doing some testing and pilot testing in Phoenix. So I look forward to hearing about what you discover there. The third thing is a little bit more contentious, and I want to raise it again because I feel in August we didn't have a real full discussion. You talked about solid waste industry challenges, and you mentioned the collection equipment. And I'm just going to remind everyone, over the last 5 years, body manufacturers who make up part of the truck that lifts the containers and packs the trash have either left the valley or gone bankrupt. Staff has warranty concerns and is currently identifying what equipment to use. The refuse truck industry is moving to larger trucks to assist with efficiencies and produce more tonnage. Small refuse trucks are more challenging to acquire. Tempe will lose the last 2 residential alleyway refuse trucks as they have reached their lifespan. Due to the limited availability of smaller refuse trucks, the city might be forced to pay premium prices for custom trucks. Now, I know we said, we had this reaction just like, no, we love the alleyways, or some people hate the alleyways, some people love them, that we don't want to even consider it. But I wonder if we can't return and just think about a pilot, or there are neighborhoods that want to pilot this. And that's a question I had. One is, there are neighborhoods that want to pilot this. I can think of a few specific areas, people that have contacted me. Is that program taking off? Because we were doing that even without this rate study. We were looking at people closing the alleyways who've got almost universal agreement to do that. So are we doing that? And could we look at areas that we want to pilot test this? Because ultimately it's going to save the city a lot of money. And I assume that the rates that you're putting forward are accounting for those premium prices, or are they not? Because that could really be a dent in our budget, in our enterprise fund.
The rates that we are putting forward would cover all of our costs, including alley maintenance and
Including the
collection.
premium prices for the refuse trucks. Right, including the premium prices for the refuse trucks that you expect.
Yes, so we've been exploring alternatives to alley collection trucks. There's something new called mountain goats, which are a little bit about 8 inches less wide than the current trucks are. They're about the same length. So we were looking at potentially trying those out and see if they work better than what we have currently. So that's we still have to evaluate that. As far as your questions regarding alleys, we're always open to listening to residents, but we have to keep in mind that we need 70% of customers on a street.
Has that happened yet? Have there been any neighbors, any of our neighborhoods that have adopted that closing of the alleyway?
I'm not aware of any currently.
Because I know specifically one.
Initiate but not.
Yeah, so initiate but not.
If that is an opportunity available to our neighborhood, can we more clearly define that so the neighbors know? Because it was sort of in the process of formation. It wasn't really a defined policy. And I know I've written many times to this one neighborhood just saying, yeah, it's going to be happening. It's going to be happening. Right. It's at College in Geneva. Geneva.
You're thinking of Brentwood Cavalier.
Right, Brentwood Cavalier neighborhood, but it was Geneva. And they really wanted to do this, but I have a lot of emails back and forth because the program wasn't ready or the protocol wasn't established yet, but it was supposed to be established, so maybe.
We can surely follow up on that and then include it in the Friday packet along with the other request.
But I mean, I just appeal to my council colleagues that we consider, we're all about pilot studies here in Tempe, and if we have neighborhoods that really do want to close alleyways, because there are people that love the alleyways, there's people that hate the alleyways too, that we could consider that as a cost-saving measure, because we know, I think, Tanya, you told me some amazing statistic of what alleyways contribute, take away from our budget. It was a painful number, and I can't remember. And I won't put you on the spot now, but if we're looking at cost-cutting measures, it's hard not to look at alleyways, and just to dismiss it out of hand, even a pilot, seems to me like we're missing an opportunity to save money.
Councilmember Erdano Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, I think, Vice Mayor, I want to be very respectful, but I think you're being very disrespectful to our conversation that we had before. We had this discussion. We told our employees that no, that is not what we wanted to do. And then you bring it up again. And I think that we've already given them very solid direction in regards to what the majority of the council wants. Yes, I think we did when we had their presentation. We specifically told them that we didn't want to close the alleys, and we didn't want the rates to get what it was to put the trash on the curb. So I think we already have a program in place. If there is a neighborhood that wants to close their alleys, there is a process to be able to do that.
There isn't. The process hasn't been really formed. I think we need to straighten it.
Has it?
I'm sorry?
Has it been formed?
That's what we said. We would research the process and then put it in the Friday packet along with the information. Just
We'll
to
find that
clarify.
information out.
As far as being really disrespectful to staff, I really want
I didn't say you're being disrespectful to staff. I think you're being disrespectful to this council.
But I heard you say earlier, Councilmember Ardonna Savage, that you looked at the recommendations that I was talking about more of an incentive. You said we need to look at the recommendations, and this is what staff's recommending, so we should go along with the recommendations. But pretty clearly in the memo of in August, they were recommending that we really look at alleyways, that this is an opportunity. So
And
they
then
were
in our last
they were recommending
presentation,
it
we said
strongly.
no. Do you remember that? At our last, when they were here last time, we had that
didn't talk
conversation.
about
Well, I don't
the
want to argue with you about it, but I
Okay,
just think to be respectful to the council and
I
move
was
forward.
looking for
But
more
this is what I want to
robust
say in
discussion.
regards to innovation is, I want to give kudos to solid waste, because if you go back to the study that you guys did and you talk about dollars, and I think Councilmember Adams brought this up, in 2009, there wasn't a rate increase from 2009 to 2015, and it was because the department was being innovative and they were doing really cool things to be able to keep the prices down. So thank you to the department and those people that have been in that department for many, many years. I think that just shows exactly how innovative the city of Tempe is, how long we've been innovative and always trying to look at different creative things so we can really provide quality service to our residents. So I appreciate that, though I do agree with the council member in regards to we don't want to have large increases. That's not really something that we want to do, and I think that we can certainly, work on that in the future. But I definitely want to say to Kyle, Steve, and Rosa, Kyle, you've obviously done this before because, you just nailed that presentation like nobody's business. So that was really, really impressive. Thank you so very much for that. So I certainly appreciate that. And I just want to give another shout out again, because I don't think we get the opportunity to do it enough. And I think when Councilmember Chin and I were there not too long ago, just thank you. Thank you to the drivers that work really hard. Thank you to the team that continue to provide really outstanding service to our residents. I will tell you, we always kind of seem to get complaints, and I know that happens, and there are some things that we don't expect to happen, but I will tell you, our drivers care, and it shows. And I couldn't be more thankful and more grateful for the quality of staff that we have and the level of service that they're providing. So please express how much I do appreciate, what they do. And I'm really grateful for it. So thank you guys for bringing this to our attention. I know we need to make some changes. I certainly support the public outreach. I know that's one thing that we're really good at, is public outreach. So thank you for continuing to do that. And I look forward to the input. Thank you.
I just want to circle back. So in the Friday memo, if we can get the information that the Vice Mayor asked for regarding the pilot program for certain alleyways, the information I asked for regarding the comparison, maybe I used the wrong term, I think we're the third highest, it's based on that regionally. One of the things I also want to point out is it's sometimes we offer a service, and that's why I want that information, what we offer entirely. If you look at an entire city, you can't just look at one issue when it comes to costs or a program. If everything was based on the cost, we wouldn't be doing recycling right now. We'd get rid of that, but we think it's important. And I know we've heard some residents may not like alleys, some residents do like alleys. I've heard a lot from that. So I think it's important that we get the information that we've asked for. Because if it truly was based on dollars and expenses or was costing, we wouldn't be doing half the stuff we're doing. But to our staff's credit, we have figured out how to be innovative. And as Councilmember Arredondo Savage mentioned, that is something that I think is something that went unnoticed, that we were innovative. We also deferred it because it was a down economy. We also had some other market influx with the market from other entities that discouraged certain, the front loaders with the multifamily industry. That really put a damper in what we were trying to do. So there's some other challenges out there that are out of our hands, but we can only focus on what we can do internally. So I want to commend the staff for being innovative. I think this is a good rate structure, especially the value that we are offering versus what other cities are not offering. I think that's something that's going to wash out. And again, we're going to get that information. We're going to continue to have this conversation, but I am fine with what you guys are proposing. And I want to thank you, Stantec, for what you guys have presented to us. Councilmember Adams and Councilmember Navarro.
Yes, I also want to echo what Councilmember Arredondo said about the staffing and what a great job you guys have done. This department has just really reached out and improved things, and I'm impressed. The drivers, it's a sweaty job, it's a hot job, it's a smelly job. I've done a lot of ride-alongs with the solid waste people, and the children, when they see this solid waste vehicle, they come running out of their houses, out of in their front yards or backyards. They want to wave to the drivers. The drivers stop a lot of times and talk to them, and it's such an important area in our city, and I commend you for what you've done. I am supportive of these changes that you're recommending, and I just appreciate all the hard work and all the workers out there doing this job. So thank you.
Councilmember Keating. Oh, wait, Navarro, then Keating.
Sure. No, actually just recognizing the same thing that's been set up here. I mean, obviously the job and the work you guys do is tremendous, and the workers out there are just tremendous. We recognize that. I think it's absolutely great that you guys have come up again with the creative ideas. I know this is sometimes tough to have increases and to try to deal with the problem and situation we have, but like I said, it's been said back in 2009 when we were doing this, I remember exactly, we're not laying off people. We're trying to do everything creative within the city. And then we had people that are losing jobs within our community, and to throw in an increase was like, do something else. So, tremendous, thanks to your staff and everybody that worked hard from back then to now. And once again, trying to, reinvent a little bit here, but we understand that we do have to make some sacrifices and some challenges, but well open to it. So thanks.
Councilmember Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question for you, actually. You just asked them to include a proposal for an alleyway closing pilot program in the Friday packet. Did you mean to find out if there was indeed already a process, or are you looking for a pilot program?
If you listen to what I said, I wasn't saying include a proposed pilot program. Find out what the process is, because Vice Mayor does not think there's a process. We're trying to get clarification if there is one and what that looks like.
Well, Mayor, all due respect, that's why I was asking for clarification, because you did say a pilot program, and that's why I was asking to say if that's what you wanted, or do you wanted the process?
No, the process of the pilot program.
So we are going to look into a pilot program.
No. Rosa?
We will include what the process is for neighbors if they are interested in that process. I'm sure there's one established, and we just need to.
My understanding, we have one out there. What that process is, I think, is what the Vice Mayor is looking for.
Yeah, we've told neighborhoods, but we haven't, followed through with what they actually
So
have to do.
in the Friday packet, we want clarification of that process.
And I was just making sure that's what you were looking for, because the pilot program was said, and I wanted to be sure that that's what we were talking about. Thank you.
Finally, I'd just like to say thank you for acknowledging the staff that's not here. We have a lot of honest people doing a lot of honest work behind the scenes. So I just thank you for acknowledging them.
Thank you.
One more thing.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify for staff's purposes. Are you saying close alleys, or are you saying just move the collection to the curb?
Yeah,
I
nothing about
keep hearing
closing.
close alleys.
Wait.
It's
So-
not all or nothing. We can move the collection to the
That's what it
curb
is.
without closing the alley.
Right, no, but see, let me explain. So under the former Public Works, would you like me not to explain it?
No, go ahead.
Under the former Public Works Director, there was a discussion in a number of neighborhoods, and I was there when he spoke and said to neighbors who wanted to close their alleyway, you have to get 70% agreement. We will put the gates down. I think we've done this in one neighborhood, actually. I'm in North Tempe. We'll put the gates there. You'll never be able to get it back to open. It'll be available to you and available for SRP to come in and check utility lines. But if this is what you want, we'll do it. But we'll do it once. We're not going to go back and do it again and switch. Once you make a decision, it's done. And so they were very excited to hear about that. And so I've had numerous emails saying, how do we get this to happen? What's the protocol? We have our 70%. So that's what I'm talking about. So it would involve, it's not so much getting the trash out front, although that's a result of it. There are some neighborhoods that want to close their alleyways.
Excuse
They're
me.
smaller streets, they're smaller. We're talking small areas. We're not talking huge swaths of.
Right. So
Excuse me, Mayor, Vice Mayor.
We're just providing information on the process.
Yeah.
Right.
That is it.
Judy is going to say something.
Again, I'm sorry, Mayor. Are we talking about the process of closing alleys? Because we're just talking about solid waste here.
Yeah.
If it's a question about, do you want us to consider all of the costs and all of that we've talked about previously, when we asked you previously, do you want to consider moving the pickup from the alley to the curb? And the city council said, no, don't consider that, so it's not in this packet. If you're talking about closing alleys tonight, I'm not sure that's on the agenda. And I'm not sure we want to respond tonight about that. But you can move refuse collection to the curb without closing the alley. or vice versa. So I'm really not clear on what you're asking us to do, but if it has to do with closing alleys, I would say that's probably not on the agenda. And you probably don't want to direct staff tonight to take up something that was not on the agenda and give the public a chance to come and comment on it tonight. If you want to talk about curbside collection, we could entertain that, but I would defer to the city attorney on that.
My point was, it's the process that Rosa just mentioned of the curbside.
Curbside pickup.
Correct. That's what.
No, the process, my
I
understanding.
thought it was for closing alleys.
Right, yeah.
If
I'll
the neighbors
send the
wanted
link
to,
tomorrow, it'll be fine.
if the neighbors wanted to initiate that
Something already
process.
out there.
Can you?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just so I kind of try to summarize what I think I'm hearing, the request, and I agree with Mr. Jones, it's outside the scope of the presentation you just heard, but that I would treat this like a request for information that we can provide in a Friday packet that would just simply list the process for if a neighborhood wished to abandon their alley in some way, just like we do abandonments of easements and rights of way around the city. There was a process that would be part of the engineering department in situations where those sorts of abandonments occur. We can very easily provide you that information, and I would treat that as if it was independent of the presentation you just heard, because that presentation was agendized, and this question is at best tangential to the presentation you just heard. So if that's what you were asking for, let me know, and we can certainly begin that, and we can put that in right away. Yes?
Is that consensus of the council?
This is a Friday pack information, right?
Correct. This is just strictly to
Yeah.
say, this is how engineering would handle a request for an abandonment of right-of-way, which is what an alley would be.
That's fine.
It would all fall under that sort of that heading of abandonment of right-of-way.
Same process we do for doing the curbs too.
Correct.
Yes.
I think it all falls under the same basic process, that a request would come, et cetera, and we would handle it as a
Thank
request.
you.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, Council, we do have one more slide left. So that we have some statutory requirements prior to the potential adoption of any rates. So on October 11th, we have to post a written notice on our website of proposed fees. We have to announce the City Council meeting of December 12th, when we will come back to council for the recommended rate adjustments. And if those adjustments are approved, they would take effect January 1st, 2020. So with that, if there's any more questions or discussion, please let us know.
We're good?
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we're going to take a 5-minute break. No, it's not. So hang on a second. You going to power through it?
Let's knock it out. We have one more. There's only one more left.
We got one more item. No break.
Better say that again, Mayor.
We're not on break, guys. We're not taking a break.
Sit back down.
All right, next item is our call to the audience for the Committee of the Whole item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us on Committee of the Whole? Can you please get our attention? Seeing none. First item is protecting neighborhoods and consequences of short-term vacation rentals.
Mayor and Council, Elizabeth Higgins, Chief of Staff to the Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to report out for the Protecting Neighborhoods from the Consequences of Short-Term Rentals Working Group. Pursuant to a recently passed state law, the working group is proposing an ordinance to require contact information and to restrict short-term rental use for residential use only. And they are proposing an ordinance change or a code text amendment to the Zoning and Development Code. A little bit of background: in 2016, the state legislature passed Senate Bill 1350, which preempted cities from prohibiting vacation rentals in our community, and it also banned us from restricting or regulating their use based on their classification, use, or occupancy. The legislature heard from a lot of communities that there were a lot of unintended consequences happening, and in the most recent legislative session, they did pass a bill to allow cities to have a little bit of more regulation of these short-term vacation rentals. It's House Bill 2672. It basically allows municipalities and counties to require the owner of a vacation or short-term rental to provide the city or county with contact information for the owner of the property and also for an emergency contact who would be taking care of issues at the property. It also clarifies that short-term or vacation rentals may not be used for non-residential purposes. In the legislation, it talks about things that would require a special permit or a restaurant, rental, retail, banquet space, or other similar use. 2672, that bill also establishes a process for the municipality or the county to notify the Department of Revenue, the Arizona Department of Revenue, of what they call verified violations that are have been reported against a short-term vacation rental in a city. And it provides for an escalating penalty structure for rentals, short-term rentals that have seen a lot of violations. And it also finally clarifies that you do need to have a TPT license or a transaction privilege tax license before you can open up your short-term vacation rental and start renting it out to people. So we have proposed an ordinance based along these lines, and I can just tell you really quick what the ordinance does. And this is just the first step of the legislature allowing cities to have a little bit more leeway. We did hear at the League of Cities and Towns Conference that the governor and several legislators were willing to look at this issue again to see if they can open up a little bit more for cities to regulate. So this is a first good step for us to start tracking these types of vacation rentals in our city and to see what kind of issues we're really seeing, because previously we haven't been able to actually track. So the proposed ordinance requires the contact information for the owner and an emergency contact, and that contact information be displayed in the short-term rental. It requires that the owner update the contact information to the city within 10 days of an effected change. It requires the city manager or the designee to develop the database to track that registration. Requires short-term rentals to comply with all federal and state laws and local laws. Clarifies the non-residential uses and requires the list of non-residential uses also to be displayed in the home or in the short-term rental. Requires the owner of the short-term rental to obtain a transaction privilege tax, and it clarifies that they cannot offer the rental until that license has been received. And so that is basically what our ordinance does. We're still working with staff to see the exact process of how we're going to be notifying the Department of Revenue, but that is something that we are working out at this time. And we did do public information and public input. So on September, a couple of weeks ago, I went to the NAC, the Neighborhood Advisory Commission meeting, and presented the ordinance there. They had some clarifying questions, but no one had any real concerns about the ordinance moving forward. We also had it on the Tempe Forum for the past 2 weeks. We had 134 surveys put in, 113 were on the Tempe Forum. There was 21 surveys gathered at a public input meeting that we had on Monday, where we had 52 people sign in. We had more like, I think, 100 people actually there. And we had some folks that were actually responsible short-term rental owners that really took pride in presenting their property and checking the people that were going to be staying in their homes. We did have a couple people that had issues with these short-term rentals in their neighborhood where they were seeing some real disruptive activity as well. So we've tracked all of that information. And the next steps would be for the ZDC, for an amendment to the ZDC. It does have to go through our Development Review Commission before coming back to the council. So 3 public hearings.
Councilmember Adams and Councilmember Navarro.
Ms. Higgins, thank you for your presentation. I have a question on like the homes that have changed their whole structure and added all these bedrooms and things like that. And, you know, there's 10 people coming and going in a house that was maybe meant for a family of 5 or whatever. How would this affect that kind of example?
So the short-term vacation rental is one that is designated as a stay for 30 days or less. There are some, I've heard of some instances of possible boarding houses in Tempe where people stay longer. This ordinance in particular wouldn't necessarily apply to them unless they are having that shorter stay. But that is something that the working group is looking at and has examined in depth, and I think is still probably going to be looking at that issue.
Great, thank you.
Councilman Navarro.
So is there, when someone is registering their home on Airbnb, VRBO, is there a way that we, if they're not registered, is that a system that we can find out if we're getting people that are trying to avoid the registration?
So as part of Senate Bill 1350, the one that was originally passed, there was an agreement that was made that Airbnb and VRBO, that these entities would be reporting the taxes collected to the Department of Revenue. And so that is why also requiring that TPT license will be important. So the Department of Revenue will have a larger scale list of all of the active Airbnbs or VRBOs or short-term vacation rentals. And our tax and license staff would likely also have access to that, but that information is largely kept confidential. But there is a list, it's just not something they can necessarily share with us because of the confidentiality of that list.
So a couple more questions. So I brought this up before, and I apologize if I forget the formula on this. If someone was to rent longer than 30 days, are they considered a hotel, and do they have to pay a hotel tax, or is it flipped the other way around where they have to rent less than the days? Is it less than?
Less than.
Okay, less than. Okay, so it's encouraged to actually do a VRBO as opposed to not. So there's no penalty. There's no penalty if you rent longer. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
Okay. And that's the catchy thing that we don't have any grasp on, because that's technically just a rental is what they're perceiving that as. So if I rent to someone for 40 days, that's perceived as a rental, no matter if they.
And it has to, and they're subjected to registration with the county and through us.
Okay. So that is one piece that we had. And I just want to recognize, and Councilmember or Vice Mayor could be really taking the lead on this and working with the residents and staff on this issue. I know this has been a long process. Many of meetings, I don't know how far we're going back, 2 years now that we've been probably doing this, talking to many residents and understanding, especially, Holbrook issue. One circumstance is that it's just a really unique deal, but long and short of it is, I think we took the lead on this, and we got other cities to help take the lead on this. And I think after our experience, it was pretty transparent that it was pretty much everywhere, but it wasn't not what I guess the Fountain Hills and the Sedonas and the Paradise Valleys, they were all into this too. So it really affected every city and every financial level. So I just want to say a tremendous work, and Vice Mayor, great job on helping us leading this through, and staff too. So thank you.
Vice Mayor.
I just want to thank Elizabeth. You've been amazing, and thanks for doing this summary. It's such a painful issue. I wanted to bequeath that to you tonight. We know that there's been some progress made in the legislature, and basically this ordinance, this change to our zoning code will just let us align with the state law, and then we'll start collecting the contact information, the emergency information. We can start to quantify what this issue is, and we have hopes in the next legislative session that we'll make some bigger gains with local control. And we have John Kavanaugh who's willing to take that forward. We have Governor Ducey, who has opened up that possibility as well. And Sandy Moriarty, who's the mayor of Sedona, has really been leading amongst all the Arizona League of Cities and Towns members on the committee I serve on, which is the Neighborhood Sustainability and Quality of Life Committee. She's really moved that resolution forward for the league, so I appreciate so much her leadership. They're facing such a crisis of affordability in Sedona that they can directly tie to Airbnbs, where people that work in the town can't even live in the town. So that is a very sad statement. I'm wondering what we should do with the working group, because it's not, a lot of the work now moves on to staff and compliance and all that. And I wonder if we should just take a hiatus or just disband it for 6 months, come back during the legislative session, or maybe you guys could report back to us, or Marge can report back to us during the session, and all of us, so we can maybe convene a public meeting and get attention paid to the legislation. We want to have people aware of what the proposed legislation is, but I'm not sure if it makes sense for us to continue meeting.
We could do a 6-month hiatus if that's the
That sound right?
direction of council.
And
And I did, just for your knowledge, earlier today send out the public input summary to all of your emails. I think it's uploaded in SharePoint, so you can check out the survey results.
Yeah.
so there were a number of people who wanted to be kept appraised of the legislative actions, and they could sign up for the legislative alert. So if it's okay with you all or the council, I could write to those folks and explain how they can get our legislative alerts and how they can request to speak at the legislature as well.
Vice Mayor and Councilman Navarro, thank you guys for really taking the lead on this. As we all know, the neighbors are the most important assets in our community, and having an avenue to help make sure that we maintain the identity of those neighborhoods, I think is important. I don't think this is done. I really don't. I think there's going to be more to come. When we were down at the league, we met with President Fan and some members of the legislature. I was in that meeting with Mayor Sandy from Sedona, really talking about this issue, because this is something, it's bigger than just the Airbnb. There should be a code part of it too, that the city should be able to enforce. And that's something that's a bigger fight down the road with the league and with other cities. So we're not done. If you take a hiatus, that's fine, but I still think there's more work to be done on this.
There is.
But thank you, Elizabeth, Ms. Higgins. All right, next item for council consideration. There are none. Any updates and items in progress?
I'm sorry, did we miss future agenda items? Is that coming up?
IRS or this?
That was for IRS. I brought that up at IRS.
Oh, shoot.
We can go back, future agenda items.
Wait, I don't know. We're in committee of the whole right now? Because didn't we just finish the solid rate? Then we did, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I do have a future agenda item, Mayor, if you would indulge me. So every October we celebrate, or not celebrate, but promote Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October is also the anti-bullying month. And on October 24th or 23rd is National Anti-Bullying Prevention Day. And there's an organization called Not in Our Town, which is encouraging elected leaders and school officials and youth to take the pledge, as they're saying, to stand up to pledge to fight all forms of hate, bigotry, and bullying. I will not stay silent in the face of intolerance based on race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender, religion, ability, or any other factor. I work together with my neighbors to create a safe and more inclusive community for all. I would like us to sign that pledge, maybe in partnership with some of our school board officials and MIAC.
I think that's good. Is that okay with the council?
Great idea.
Yep. Vice Mayor?
Yes. Oh, just, I was hoping that we could add, I know we have 5 items for October 24th, but I was hoping we could add an update about possible Dolores Huerta Day. And I have some research that's been compiled by a student in Tempe that lists the cities and towns that have adopted some kind of a day in celebration of Dolores Huerta. Not necessarily, actually most of them are just a celebration day and not a paid holiday. But I have some information to relay, but I was hoping we could discuss it October 24th because her birthday is April 10th. If we wanted to do this, there's not that much time to plan.
You just, so you
So
request.
I brought it up before that we were going to have it reported. It's not listed anywhere in the calendar, and I wondered if it could be on October 24th.
Council okay with that? So
That I'll get information.
You're going to get information on it?
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's fine.
I mean, if it's just a day of celebration, it's not like a paid day, like you said.
Well, that was one of the options, but we don't have to consider that. But it was the council, staff was going to bring back the options.
Okay.
But we didn't set a date, so I just wanted to set a date because if it's April 10th, we should make decisions.
That meeting, I think it's really full. Can it come back?
This is probably a short
Mayor and members of council, I just wanted to let you know on October 24th, we appear to have 7 items right now. So that would be the 8th, even though this is the most updated draft that we're reviewing.
That's a lot.
We could certainly include
the
it
following one?
if that's the council's pleasure.
I'll give you more time to do it.
It's November, yeah.
Oh.
It's just that if, let's say we do adopt a day of celebration, there might be some planning that needs to happen. And if we extend that out into November with vote in December, January, it doesn't give a lot of time for staff to respond. I don't think it's going to be an especially long item, but
Well, is council okay with that? Put it on the 24th?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What's one more?
It'll be a longer meeting.
Maybe out of town.
Take them all up.
All right.
thank you.
Anyone else have any other future agenda items? I guess I unfortunately skipped that item. Seeing none? Okay, we don't have any items for consideration. Any updates on items in progress from the council? Seeing none? Mr. Mayor, do you have any announcements?
No, Mayor.
There's no announcements? With that, we are adjourned.